One. All right. Good morning, everybody. At least for me and for others, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. We are here at the International Global Gauntlet Con, which is performed over the internet, which is pretty cool and special. So I get to play with amazing people from around the world. So we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves real quick for our Playstorming exercise. I want to give everyone a chance to get to know everybody. So first I'll introduce myself. My name is Michael. I use he, him pronouns, and I have an icebreaker question for you. And that question is, what is your favorite gadget? Now I'm going to go ahead and answer to give you folks some time to think about that. And you probably laugh at me because mine is very simplistic. My favorite gadget is the carabiner, the little clip that rock climbers use to make sure they don't fall off a wall to their death. I use it to keep my keys on my belt loop. And I don't know what I would do without my little carabiner. That's me. I'm going to go clockwise around my screen here. So, Steven, would you introduce yourself next?
Hi, I'm Steven, and I go by he, him. And as far as my favorite gadget, it might be backpacks. I have some kind of weird fascination with them, with the number of pockets, how comfortable they are, does it fit my laptop or my iPad or something like that. So I have this small collection of backpacks.
My name is Donna. I'm based in Dublin, Ireland. My pronouns are he, him, and wow, my favorite gadget. I think I'm going to go with a mocha pot. The kind of the bubble up coffee pot. Probably a little bit too big to count as a gadget, but that's what I'm going for on this. A little bit of care and attention to get the best out of it. You can't just do whatever you want with it, but yeah, super useful.
All right, my name is Simon, pronoun he, him, and I have no idea what my favorite gadget is. I really can't think of anything. Damn. Really, nothing. I don't know.
I've stumped you.
Yes.
Take a drink.
Yeah.
There we go.
Coffee mugs. No.
Yeah, isn't it great that you can have a cup that you can put a hot liquid in?
Yes.
I mean, think about it. Cool. Well, that's awesome. Thank you all so much for joining me today. So Playstorming, I discussed it with you briefly before we started our broadcast, but let me go ahead and see if I have Epidaia's quote up here. Not exactly, but I have my own quote because I got my cat set up, concept, aim, tone, subject matter. So first off, what is Playstorming? Usually this is a form of dynamic playtesting, okay, where a designer brings an idea for a game and actively adapts the game's design with player feedback. So instead of logging playtest feedback at the end of your session, you're actually going to be adapting it on the fly during the game. Instead of just brainstorming, though, we will be playing the game and figuring out the rules as we go along. The shorthand I have for this is collaborative Calvin Ball. If you're not familiar with Calvin Ball, it's like from a cartoon with a little boy and his possibly imaginary tiger friend, and they play this game called Calvin Ball where they make the rules up as they go. As for Numenera, let me give you the pitch on that. It's a game in which, as Monte Cook Games describes it, the player characters explore the ruins of aeons past to gather amazing treasures and help build a new future for a world struggling in darkness. And that's specifically for Numenera 2, but that sounds pretty cool, so that's what we're rolling with. And for World of Dungeons, it is a minimalized hack of Dungeon World, which is a narrative adaptation of Dungeons and Dragons. So we're all the way down.
So we're doing a hack of a hack of a hack of a hack.
Absolutely, and that's my favorite place to be. At that point, you start to kind of lose sight of where the hack begins and where the hack ends. So our aim for today, by the end of the exercise, we won't have a complete game. We'll probably have the bones for an interesting game and a fun story to tell about it. We'll be taking a 15-minute break, an hour and 45 minutes in, and I'm going to make sure that we finish up by 3 hours and 45 minutes to make sure people have time for a break for the game in the next slot. Now, the Gauntlet Con team this year has done an excellent job of coding in hard breaks in between time slots, but I still want to make sure you got that extra 15 minutes at the end to do whatever you have to do. So that's my plan for timing. Okay. The tone. So for the tone of our session, it's important to remember that these adventurers are hopeful individuals, but they're still struggling in a world of darkness. I think what we should try to do, though, is let that collaborative spirit of Playstorming bleed into the story we tell also. So we're kind of being collaborative, hopeful, optimistic, creative in both our Playstorming, our play and our brainstorming, if that makes sense. Cool. So as far as subject matter goes, sometimes Numenera can lean into body horror as far as possibly uncomfortable things. I don't have any other specific content warnings as of now, but I do like to use safety tools like lines and veils, which we can use to kind of set up some things that we don't want to see in our session. I also like to use script change and the X card. So for the purposes of our exercise today, I would like to dial back the content of the story a little bit so that we can focus a bit more on the play and not have to be as intensely focused on the subject matter. So I think by giving it a heading of PG-13, that will hopefully preclude a number of things that I would otherwise definitely want on my lines and veils. Things like sexual assault, violence towards children, like those things are shunted away with this PG-13 heading in mind. If you want to, in the private chat, include any additional lines and veils that you want folks to know of ahead of time, we can have that list in our minds as well to try to avoid that content so everyone can focus on telling a good story and playing with the rules and mechanics. Other safety tools we have the X card. Anytime any kind of subject matter comes up that you're just uncomfortable with, hit that X. This is a very writer's room approach to this game because we're probably going to hit points where we're like, oh, that mechanic didn't really work out for me the way I thought. So we're going to use script change as well. This is a way to kind of manipulate our play at the storytelling level where we can pause the action, we can rewind the action, try it a different way. We can fast forward if we want to focus on a particular mechanic and just want to jump to that sort of thing. We can use those tools to hop around with our storytelling. Does anybody have any questions about any of those safety tools and how we might apply them? You familiar with those? Okay. Excellent. And anytime it comes up, you need a little refresher, you just raise your hand, ask me, put it in the private chat. We're all going to be keeping an eye on each other, making sure we're having a good time. Along with that, we have the open table. If you need to take a break for whatever reason, you can just hop out. No explanation necessary. If you anticipate you might need a little break in a minute, you can maybe send a message in chat like, hey, can we take a break? My mind is filled with mush and I need to go sneeze or something, we can definitely facilitate that. Breaks are very healthy for this sort of thing. Cool. That's most of my spiel. Oh yeah, and I'm doing early on time. Cool. So I want to talk a little bit about promoting that collaboration through shared responsibilities. So this is inspired by like a blog post that Garrett put up not too long ago on the Gauntlet RPG blog about handing off certain GM roles like that are traditionally expected of a GM to the other people at the table to kind of help lighten that load. So there's a lot of layers going on with our exercise today. It's kind of a lot to ask of one person to try to take on all of those roles. So I'm going to copy here. There are 3 roles in particular I'd like to hand out for at least this exercise. I'll put that in the private chat. I'll even put it in the public YouTube chat if anyone is watching. Oh, we don't have any watchers at this time, but well, whatever. In case somebody shows up later. Yeah, so these 3 roles can be really helpful for keeping each person's focus in a specific area while also being invested in the game. There is technically a 4th role of like what I would call the director, and that would be the person who's like taking on the GM role if necessary, moving the spotlight, moderating the discussion. Unless we have like a veteran Numenera GM here who can run that without even needing a book or a module or whatever to keep you going, you can raise your hand and say me, and I'll pass it on to you gladly. But I kind of came here prepared to do that because that seemed like one of the roles that needed more previous preparation, things like that. Cool. Well, I don't want to have everybody talk at once, but I'm going to go by order of RSVP on our event site to ask each person which role they would most like. And if you want to pass, you can do that and let somebody else decide. But that's going to be my method of organizing that. Let me just pull up our event page so I can make sure I got that right. Simon, you are RSVP number 1. Which of these roles do you think you could handle most easily?
Researcher.
Okay, cool. You will be our official Googler. If you have any Numenera PDFs or anything, or World of Dungeons or blogs or other things you think are interesting that might apply, be like, Simon, Google that. Awesome. Thanks so much, Simon. Steven, you are our next choice here. Which of these do you think you'd like?
I can do writer. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I already have that Playstorming doc up in our Google Drive, so you can access that. That's set to share, right? You can edit, or to edit that, you can edit that.
I will check.
Okay. Donag, are you comfortable with being our producer?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're aiming for, I guess, keep an eye on our timing and breaks and just general check-ins. And I guess at the end, I can do the debrief.
Exactly.
I know we're going to be doing a lot more, through play, but I guess roundups at the end might be useful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any sort of like feedback at the end, just a chance to cool off and suggest. And also, if you could ask for some feedback on how this activity or exercise could be improved. This is something that I enjoy and would like to make the process even smoother and more exciting for people.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Simon took a quick break here. I'm going to double check my online. Okay. Cool. Oh, that was quick. Okay. The first thing I like to do when Playstorming as a way to kind of just start talking about the story, start talking about the rules, is just to do character creation. So I'm going to start having each of you create a character. And pretty often through that process, we're going to see points where we need some additional support. Some questions come up like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? So in that Playstorming document, you'll see the kind of process for character creation. And the first thing we're going to see is you'll need to pick a nature. Okay. So this defines how your characters acquired their skills and abilities and how they can grow as an explorer, and kind of describes their relationship to the Numenera being the ancient technology of eons past that is sort of strange and magical in nature. Yeah. So this is, I think, backgrounds is what they're called in Numenera. It's kind of a similar concept here. But we have the genetic, which is it's something in your DNA. Either you were born or reborn with the knack to do the things you do. Even the weirder ones, maybe you were part of an experiment. Maybe you had a gifted ancestor. Maybe you had a weird event that rewrote your anatomy. There's lots of weird directions we can go with that. We have modified. In this case, your body is part Numenera. You have machine enhancements integrated with your physiognomy that allow you to do the things you do. Did somebody or something do this to you? Did you do it to yourself? If you did you need it or did you want it? Do you have additional parts basically run themselves, or do you need to do some maintenance? These are some questions to think about if you like the modified nature. Then one of my favorites is the trained. You just try really hard. I don't know if any of you watched the One Punch Man anime, but the guy became the most powerful superhero basically by doing a lot of push-ups. Pardon me. But you practice day in and day out until you could perfect your ability to do the things you do. Did someone teach you? Were you part of a class? Do you have a rival or a senior? Did you learn by yourself? Did you approach your training through trial and error? Did you find instructions you could follow? So those are some of the different natures you can have. Stephen, I'm going to start with you. You're starting to create this weird Numenera character in your mind. Which of those natures do you think is the most interesting?
So for me, I think I like modified. So I have a question about this character creation. One of the things I like about, if you don't mind me asking a question now.
Do it.
Fantastic. I actually have a list of questions that we can go through as they come up during character creation. So one of the things I like about Numenera is that it's pretty easy to describe characters because there's a sentence structure. Yes. I'm a adjective, noun, verbs. Right. And in this case, is the nature the noun kind of structure? Or are you keeping that structure, or is that something you'd thought about?
So yeah, I love I'm a blankety blank who blanks. That's such a cool idea. But I think one of the ideas behind this, Louise wanted to get away a little bit from the warrior rogue mage split and make it something a bit more narrative. And we see with each of the Jack, Glaive, and Nano, which is the warrior rogue mage, so to speak, of Numenera, that they each also have a background like this that kind of helps describe how they became a Glaive or a Nano or a Jack. So we said, skip that layer and just go straight to the backgrounds. So I think this could be your noun. We were thinking maybe it has to do with advancement. Maybe they could have special rules, maybe not. Okay. I think this is something in between an adjective and a noun.
The reason I asked is, like, whenever I've run Numenera in the past and I'm introducing this to new players, I didn't pass out pre-gens at first because people get distracted by all of the stats and all that kind of stuff, or all the options for choices. What I would do instead is I would pass out the sentence.
Oh.
And that was enough for them to say, oh, I'm a flashy Jack that defies gravity or something like that.
Yes.
And it was real simple to get there. And I see that in this nature. I'm a genetic something that somethings or something like that. I can see part of that sentence structure, which is why I was asking. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
You're going to need to remind me, how much of the GH do I want to pronounce in your name? Just let it be. You're muted for me right now, though. You're still muted. Sorry. Can you hear me? I think you're muted on there. Oh, okay.
I muted myself by accident.
Sorry. Double mute.
You want to pronounce none of the GH. It's one of these weird Irish names where the spelling does not help you at all. So just Donna.
I'll pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
So Donna, which of these natures appeals to you the most for your character today?
I am liking genetic. There's a lot buried in here, I think.
Mm.
A lot of different options or, potential backstory, that you hint at or you can uncover just by a simple choice here as to where you got those genetics. So, yeah, I think I'm most interested in that.
Very cool.
And like in terms of overlap with modification, is there, would you say, were you part of an experiment, that kind of bleeds a little bit into modified,
Yeah.
you see like a strict line between that, or is it okay to blur those?
I should think it's okay. I mean, just because you have cyber arms doesn't necessarily mean that you still don't practice, so you still have some of the lead with like the trained and the modified as well.
Yeah.
I think part of it just has to do with how you approach the Numenera and how you like try to improve yourself. So if you're the genetic, you're probably going to try to like tap into whatever that experiment was. You want to try to play with your genes, your mutations, as opposed to looking for more technology to test yourself. You might look for technology that will genetically modify you, but you wouldn't necessarily stick it into your body.
Cool.
Awesome. Simon, which of these? And again, it's okay to double up if you want to do one of those.
Well, I was going to train for the sake of trying everything, but also there's just something really cool about like people, the other classes or type natures having advantage, and you're just good at it. You're not you don't have this cheat code to get your bear around. You just try hard and you're able to do it. There's something cool in that.
Very cool. Awesome.
Oh, and then agrees.
So our next step then is going to talk a little bit about what your character can do. So you're actually going to be able to choose between both skills and variances. Skills are mundane proficiencies any regular person could perfect. It's not that you just simply know how to do it. It means you're very good at tasks that rely on that skill. Whereas variances are special abilities that go beyond what the average person could do, like controlling electricity, talking to machines. And you're going to come up with the origin of your starting variances based on your nature. And you can add that exotic event in your background that gave you access to those weird powers. So you start with a total of 3 skills or variances. But you have to have at least one of each. So you could have 2 skills and a variance, or 2 variances and 1 skill. However you like. This is kind of like with the Numenera sentence structure, the verb. So with Numenera, they have a very structured kind of like development for each of their verbs. I think one of them is like, who bears a halo of fire, right? Which sounds really cool. At level 1, you can maybe like sneeze fire or something. But by level 20, you can like you're on fire all the time. So we wanted to adjust that so that like it's cool for everyone right off the bat. But there also isn't a lot of like progression with that. It's just, it is what it is. And you can bring that into the fray mechanically if you'd like. So again, a little bit more pared down, a little bit more minimalistic, but that's kind of what we're going for. So take a minute to kind of visualize your character and look over these 30 variances we have, or you can roll randomly if you'd like. We can pull up a 1d30 here with our internet dice roller. If anyone has a variance that they think sounds cool right off the bat, feel free to step up and share it with the class.
I just have a quick question. I have not played Numenera 2. Is variant something from NuWoDu, or is that term you came up with?
That is our copyright avoiding infringement term. Yeah, it's just like a way to say ability
Okay.
kind of thing.
Alright.
Yeah.
I'm looking at beast shape. It looks pretty cool. And obviously we can, it's, as far future as Numenera is kind of genetic engineering to make someone capable of doing that. So yeah, that sounds pretty cool to me.
And Donna, you also had genetic, or was it trained?
It was genetic.
Genetic, perfect. Okay.
So for your character, Donna, do you see yourself you started off with this sort of strange beast shape variance, and you kind of had to gather these skills along the way to try to balance that? Maybe you faced a lot of like community ostracization or whatever because they didn't like your beast shape, or do you have an extra variance that makes you even weirder that you picked up along the way?
I was thinking, I don't know in terms of, the individual societies, how accepting they are of this level of weirdness, but maybe there's kind of a bloodline in the community that has this ability, so it's, way back when maybe there was some genetic program to do this kind of thing, but now it's just like a family or a bloodline in the community that can do this kind of thing. So now when you go elsewhere, maybe there's a real problem with that. But and obviously as an explorer, you're obviously going to be going outside of your home community a lot. But yeah, there's plenty of cool variances in there, but nothing else that jumps out at me is like, I must combine these two together to make myself incomprehensibly weird. I guess animal communication kind of might work with that, but it's not jumping out at me.
Cool. So you'll probably just end up picking two skills that you're
yeah, I might do that.
Yeah. All right.
I know one variant I would like is gravity control. Which is a bit weird for someone that is trained.
You push up the world now. You're doing push downs.
No, but even train, I can still see the use of Numeneras in these abilities. A bit like the nano as some kind of interface to manipulate the nano machines that creates the magical effect. I think my character does have some kind of interface, just really hard to use, and yes, train in the art of using it.
That makes sense to me.
Also, kind of shaping in my mind as some kind of monk, or at least part of a monastic order. And gravity control is one of their central skills. I imagine like training on rock formations all around, not caring about gravity, and training parkour that goes up mountains and really like unnatural angles.
That is cool. I like that as well. Yeah, I can definitely start to see this person. Steven, big list there. Anything pop out to you?
Yeah, sure. So I was thinking crystal body. Is it possible for me to modify that a little bit? So I was thinking mechanical body. So I think I'm basically a brain in a jar. I have a completely mechanical body. That's the text is, "You are sturdy and strong, but not very nimble. you're immune to most diseases and poisons. But I think instead of sensitive to sound, maybe sensitive to mechanical manipulation or electricity or something like that.
Yeah, works
Yeah.
for me. So here's a question for you, just to get into the storming part of this right off the bat. Would you like to see something more generic, like hard body, with ideas like crystal, metallic, plasteel, or something?
So in my opinion, what I see is if you give too many options, especially to people who are first seeing this for the first time, they get lost in the options. I would rather see very concrete, direct descriptions, and then maybe a word or a sentence above it that say modify these as required or as you want. So I think crystal body is great.
Yeah, like a side panel designer notes.
Yeah, you can see that a lot in the RPG nowadays. This little sidebar saying, "Oh, if your characters have other ideas, you can totally modify that."
Okay, good to know. We'll make a note of that. Okay, okay. So your brain in the jar. Does that mechanical body, other than giving you this sort of like sturdy defense, do you have other tricks built into that body, other numenera you've incorporated into your form, or have you just really gotten to know this body well and practice skills and fine manipulation while using it?
So I think that I think that this character has focused on being able to manipulate machines and learned about itself and so on. I think it's been so long in this mechanical body, it doesn't really remember how it got here. So looking through some of the other stuff, some of the other variances and such, I like. Well, I like more than three. So Technopath makes a lot of sense, as does the skill Repair. So maybe that's the direction I'm going.
Cool.
Yeah.
So skill-wise, for our beast-shaping family member, what do you think? What skills have they picked up along the way?
I kind of had been thinking about climbing or jumping, but I think that kind of steps on Simon's character's toes a little bit much. I don't. It sounds really cool, probably cooler in his description of his character than I was. So I'm definitely thinking navigation, and I am thinking maybe animal handling. As a skill instead of the variance of communication. So there's a little bit of different flavor there, I think. I
like that.
And I think navigation, I mean, I think some of it is, hard-won experience and kind of transferring of knowledge, but some of that is also kind of innate. Hey, I've been a swallow or whatever it is. I know which way is which.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Follow your nose.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I bet the navigating in the ninth world is probably a little bit trickier. Because I have a feeling that the magnetic poles are all screwed up, and there's like clouds of nanobots that come for your weather, all kinds of weird stuff. How about our parkour gravity-defying monk? What other skills do you think? I mean, climbing, jumping, running.
Well, jumping, running, I think are my obvious choice. I was trying to be a little bit less specialized, but then remember how you wrote how the dice work, and it is something. It is cool to double up on the variance and the skill. So I'm keeping jumping and running, and it's something I find cool.
I have a feeling you will always land on your feet when you have
Yes.
46 at your disposal.
Can I ask a question about this kind of skill range here?
Sure.
So there's climbing and there's running and there's jumping.
It's a little
And
so redundant, isn't it?
it seems like a lot of if you want to be a super athletic character, which Simon is aiming for, you kind of have to put too many of your eggs into that basket. You think maybe a more broader skill set is more useful. I don't know.
That's a good point. I think it would be pretty easy to condense those things into like athletics.
Yeah.
And if you want to do that, Simon, we can do that. So if you're feeling like, man, I wanted to be able to be a little bit more broad, but I have to describe myself in such a specific way. Otherwise, I'm going to be like walking around and then jumping 100 feet in the air, which seems a little different than we envision your character.
I actually don't know, because that's one of my. I also have a point about the skill selection. It's not the opposite, but I feel like there's missing something in terms of diversity of skill.
I see.
I cannot pin exactly what, but I
That
feel like
that's something else. Placeholder is just really large in your mind.
Yeah, if I pick something else, that means I'm good at everything except those listed here.
That's a good. Well, so let me give you a little one point about this, right? One of our frustrations with Numenera is that it says this is a game about exploration. This is a game about discovery. But when you get to the meat of the rules, it's like, this is a game about killing things. It's got this like Dungeons and Dragons pedigree that they claim to have come away from, but it still feels pretty strong just if you look at the bulk of the text. So we thought, hey, let's put skills that are all not having to do with fighting. Maybe that will emphasize but I'm not a big fan of skill lists, to be honest. The longer, the worse. Once we get into aeronautic design and engineering, it's like, okay, we've gone too far.
Well, knowledge name a field is perfect for this, but
I'd love some feedback though, like ways we can make this skill list more engaging.
I think right now for this Playstorming, if I can combine jumping and running to a single skill, I will take something else, something about maybe meditation or mental control, mental fortitude, something like that.
It's the power is yours.
Well,
what's your stamp on it?
Let's just call it meditation.
Meditation. Love it.
And I will write parkour instead of jumping and running. All right.
So I want to make sure. Are we able to have a little brief description of everyone's character in a page? Do we have that anywhere?
Things for all the different characters, so I could cut and paste that into the bottom of the playtest document.
Oh yes, just so I can remember, what can they do again? Yeah. I'm hoping that these characters will be pretty easy. You won't need a big old character sheet for these fellows, but cool.
Okay, so I cut and paste that into the bottom.
Okay. So there is one more thing I would like to do to give everyone a chance to engage with the mechanics fully, and that is to get some ciphers on the table. So a cipher in Numenera is like a weird little device that you have a specific function for that it's just like a little gadget, so to speak. They're not very reliable. They probably don't have very many uses. You might have to be creative with how you might take advantage of it or leverage it. Now, the way that this works with the mechanics so far is that each cipher has a specific level, and that level is just an addition to your sum on your 2d6 or more roll. But if you get over a 12, that means that your cipher has overloaded. So it's sort of a little bit of a risk to take advantage of them, but also it kind of gives you some new tools. So I put in a link to Roll for Your Party. If everybody just wants to roll a D100, I'm going to just steal from the Numenera list of ciphers and see what y'all have under your belt.
So I rolled a 06.
Okay. You get a Catholicon. This is a pill that cures any disease.
I have a 76.
A 76 and a 47 for Donna. Let's do the 47 first. You have a Donna. You have a lightning wall projector.
That does exactly what it says on the tin, I presume.
Indeed.
As marketed.
As marketed.
So the cipher level that these suggest usually starts with a 1d6. So first, let me give a cipher level to that Catholicon real quick. The Catholicon has a level of 1d6 plus 2. Let me roll you a d6 here. Okay, so you have a level 6 Catholicon. Level 6 Catholicon cures any disease of the cipher level or lower. So that's another thing. Numenera talks a lot about levels. We don't have that sort of concept necessarily in our in NuWoDu, because it involves a lot of multiplication and division, which feels kind of a little step too far mechanically. So I'm going to probably say you can just cure any disease, because I don't have a rule for a level 4 disease necessarily.
Could you just remove all the multiplication and stuff and just say it's levels? So rather than level times 3, it cures a level 6 disease, and a level 6 disease might be measles, but a level 15 disease might be paralysis?
It could be. So then the question would be, okay, how do I overcome a level 15 disease without a cipher? And so it's like,
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. But
Yeah.
Levels,
it's odd to
or
apply
just
numbers to things because you want to keep it more narrative.
right.
Yeah.
But I do want a number to give that device, just so we have something to add. Adding a whole D6 worth of numbers is interesting because it probably means success, but it probably also means you're probably going to overload.
I think that cipher was meant to be one. Well, ciphers are meant to be one shots in the original game. So,
yeah.
So I think it will really be with +6, and if we got 12 plus, it overloads. So
I'm really interested to see how the pill overloads. Yeah.
I mean, I'm interested to see how you use a pill and it doesn't overload, and then you get to use it again. That's
you've got to wait one day.
yeah.
You have a level 4 lightning wall, wall projector. I don't know if I even want to describe this, or if I should just say like Catholicon probably needs a description. Like, you got a Catholicon. What is that? I don't know. Lightning wall projector creates a wall of electric bolts up to 30 feet by 30 feet by 1 foot that inflicts damage equal to the cipher level on anything that passes through it. Conforms to the space available. Lasts for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Need any of that typed out, or do you kind of have that in your mind?
I think I'm taking some notes as well here. So
Cool. I wish I could copy from my one laptop over to my other laptop. That's why I need two screens instead of just two keyboards. Okay. Yes. 76. Simon.
Yeah. Just saying I googled Catholicon, and it's a 13th century Latin dictionary.
That you eat. That's pretty interesting. Ooh, Simon, you have a shock nodule.
Oh, I think those nodule was something that you attach to a weapon or something like that.
It could be. Let's see how they describe a shock nodule. Yeah, it's a crystal nodule affixed to a melee weapon.
All right, so I have this on a wristband, and the crystals that fix on it. Going to do
Ooh.
lightning punch.
And it's level 6. So it's,
Shocking lightning punch. Maybe for me too.
yes, very powerful. Yeah, so we'll see in play if rolling the d6 is a bit much, or if we should do a d4 instead and give you more possibilities of not overloading. But that's what we got for now. Okay. Any other questions for character creation before we maybe like try to do a little storytelling here?
I have a question about taking notes. So far in the Playstorming document, I've been putting in some of the questions that have come up during character creation. I've been italicizing it. How much do you want me to muddy up this document?
Oh,
I can put in other questions that have come up, but it might get a little bit distracting.
I don't care about the document itself getting muddied up. You mean distracting, like for the reader, not for yourself, right?
And I mean, as we move along, if I start putting all these questions in place, it might get distracting for us as we go back to refer to that document, because it's always changing.
True. Well, I'd like to hear from everybody. Are you okay with having the italics scrolled through, or do you want me to have a little cutout document with just the core resolution?
You can add comments, right? So yeah, so if you like right click on the text, you should have an option to add like a little speech bubble.
And just keep that all in the sidebar.
And you know, if it's relevant for a specific entry, like jumping or whatever it is, you can just add a comment, and it's exactly where it needs to be. It makes it a little bit messier when you want to take the text out to make a new document, right? But for using the document right now, that might be the better option.
Perfect.
Good call.
That's perfect.
Okay. Shock nodule. We are shock nodule. We're here to rock your socks off. Okay. Very cool.
Can I ask a silly question about this shock nodule then? Is that like instead of the old-fashioned spearhead or arrowhead that you can chuck at people or shoot at people, or is that like a mace head flange thing?
What do you think, Simon?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear the question. I was
The shock nodule, is that like an attachment instead of an old-fashioned arrowhead or spearhead, or is that like something that might be on a mace or a flange head or something like that?
What I remember of nodule is like being really like some kind of crystals that you place on a weapon, and I think that's really how I still see it. Might be more like a jewelry piece or something. Jewelry to me probably techno synth with printed circuits on it, but still just a light piece of crystal.
Cool.
So I want to give Stephen a little bit of time to format that document with the comments and stuff. Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
Let's talk about names. Let's talk about appearance. Do we need a name generator? Are people cool
I'll
with...
always need a name generator.
Well, let's see.
I mean, I think also, you want to give a flavor of the world in, like a list of names and say, or, make up your own. But, you need to, I think, usually lead the reader to, you don't want people coming up with silly names that are completely at odds with anything else. And you kind of guide people, I think, a little bit by giving them a list of names that all kind of give the same feeling or whatever.
So I had actually, I run Numenera for some story gamers, and one of the complaints that they had was they like Powered by the Apocalypse games because one of the first things that happens on the character sheet is, what is your name, what is your appearance, and it provided choices to give you an idea of the flavor of the game and that character. If you're driving for a narrative style inside NuWoDu, then I'd suggest that have a list of different character names, and then weird descriptions to really evoke that feeling. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not. I was making my silent facial reactions because I thought I was muted. No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm typing in some of these little suggestions they have here on the sidebar for Ninth World, but I think you're absolutely right. Especially since this is kind of a game with a cool aesthetic, being able to reinforce that with some suggestions for each, maybe for each nature could help with that, or maybe just in general.
Maybe also, given that some of the variances are really kind of strong visually, you add like a couple of suggestions for each. Hey, maybe think about adding this to your character description, especially for stuff like Crystal Body or that kind of thing,
Just by the way, I was Googling Numenera name generator, and I didn't find one, but I found something really interesting that I'm linking up in the private comments, private chat. It's just a Numenera oddity generator.
Where an oddity is just, it's kind of like a cipher, except it doesn't probably have any power.
It's for the whole world. It might be a cipher, it might be a cool Terran feature, just a weird situation.
Cool. All right. I'm probably going to need that.
I think you're right. It's like the useless cipher thing, but they're still very cool. But to piggyback on what everyone was saying, yeah, that's one thing that's very cool about most PBTAs. That list of names that that brings you into making quick choices if you don't have any on the top of your head. And there's always the option of not picking any of those choices and going with your own.
Absolutely. Well, considering our lack of choices, maybe I'll just ask some questions to try to get a little bit of a feedback going, and we can kind of crystallize your character's appearance, no pun intended, for everyone to help us imagine that. How about each of us will ask you one question about your character's appearance, and you can answer that how you see fit. So, like, I'm going to start with you, Simon. I'm going to ask you, for your character, what does their skin look like?
Mm-hmm. Let's go with an unusual color, bluish.
Wow. Did that come from their training with their connection with this, or is it something they were born with?
I think born with I know the nine world yeah, like what passes as a human is not the same uh as we are used today. Lots of variation has occurred. I think it has to do with the area I was born in and trained in. Uh,
Do you have like tattoos or piercings on your skin, or brands or anything like that?
oh yeah, I didn't thought of that. Okay, so bluish is the base color tint more that I have, but yeah, more tattoo the like most monastic order, we have some kind of uniform, but the uniform has very little cloth and more tattoos. So more like tribal like pattern, like maybe all over the body, uh, with well, like I said, with minimal clothing.
Okay. Dano or Steven, do you have a question for Simon's character?
So you described coming from kind of a monastic order.
Hmm.
What kind of rituals or vows does that order do? Would this be a vow of silence, or would this be a vow of poverty, or something like that? That might affect your appearance.
I think my appearance. Um, I think this will be a vow of I don't know the English word for this. Um, well, I'll just describe it. Having fasting. Um, doing a lot of fasting, really eating bare minimum. So my character is very thin because of that.
Ah, I see. Perfect.
I'm wondering, is there any kind of, say, leakage of the gravity control, like when you're maybe not concentrating or concentrating on other things? Does dust unsettle or anything like that? Is there any kind of spillover, unintentional?
Yeah, I was kind of imagining my character will I'll always have a little rocks, gravels with one overring around me, uh, or maybe just like a few insects off the ground that are trying to go by.
So like a fly or whatever the equivalent noon air just goes
Yeah,
past you, and then suddenly it's like 20 feet, 20 feet
yeah,
after.
or starting to orbiting me.
Oh yeah. Nice.
And no, not the air. I think the minimalistic cloth, and I think I have a shade air too. That is to prevent these sort of signs that I'm not in tune with gravity. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jenna, for your character, I would like to know, like, what is their tell? Like, how has their beast shape, like, other people in the community know you're part of that bloodline?
I think I think throughout the skin, certainly on areas like the arms and whatever, like there's like almost a constant state of goosebumps. Like the hairs are always standing up in this kind of animal instinctual kind of make yourself bigger sense. And I think that's where the shape changing starts. It starts from the outside, and so the hair starts to change. But even when nothing's happening in that, you can kind of look at it and see, hey, that guy is really cold or whatever. There's goosebumps there, but that's always on, no matter how hot or cold it is.
I think I'll ask the opposite question. When you are transformed as an animal, what does it tell that well, that says that you might not have been an animal from the start?
I think um, the sounds that he makes as an animal are just not right, you know. Or maybe in some forms he's completely silent. You know, he doesn't make any of those instinctual animal noises. So just a little bit too quiet or too, you know, not purely animal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like there's articulation in your growling.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll ask you, do you have an animal companion that travels with you?
I don't think so that's an option, right, in one of the variances that I didn't take, so I don't want to take it. But I think because he's working so much with animals, it's just like their work tools almost, even if he kind of loves them or whatever, but he doesn't keep one as a pet. I don't.
In that case, do you have an affinity towards one type of animal?
Yeah, I would need to know a lot more about the Numenera ecology to
Or you
make
could
that
just make one up.
But yeah, I think
make one up. That's what they did.
yeah, exactly. So I think maybe there's some kind of like a solar powered vulture or something like that, right? That, you know, does usual vulture things, but almost never lands except to do prey. But that's maybe the air currents aren't as set up like they are on Earth, so it's like solar powered, and that's how it stays up, or like wafts on the solar things. And I think I've got an affinity with them. Maybe I've got a lure trick that I can call them down, even if there's nothing that they really want down in the ground.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like in Numenera, they'll be like, we call this a bear, and it's like this monstrous animal with no eyes and like tusks, and it's like, yeah, that's a bear. It's like, well, okay. I love the solar powered vultures though. That's a cool image. Stephen, for your character, are any of your biological components visible to the naked eye?
I think that in the, during my resting period, so I think there's basically a window in my chest, very much like Grievous in the Star Wars movies, right? You can see components inside the chest. I put a small picture up in the document that I stole from a Numenera book. But basically, I think inside that chest, whenever I rest, you can see that window. Yeah. Maybe it pulses a little bit. I think so. I think it needs to be exposed during that resting period in order to recharge or flush all the toxins out and stuff like that.
Gross, I dig it.
I'm wondering, is there signs that, you know, certain parts have been swapped in and out over the course of the years? You know, you said you've been around a long time. So is everything still the original or repaired, or is like there been a bit of tinkering going on?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a bunch of things that are modified and, kind of cobbled together. It's not really clear whether or not I've forgotten how I ended up this way, or if it's just that the repairs and issues, the failures in the system blocked out that memory. So there's gonna be glitchy things that go on. Yep.
Okay. Can I ask another question? There's no, like, when you talk about the weaknesses, right? You talk about mechanical or electronic, but nothing about magnetism. Is that like, are you
Ooh.
proof for magnetism? Is that like a common attack that you've already defended yourself against?
Ooh, I don't think that that's really come up that often. As you can see in the cipher selection, there's a lightning wall, projection area, shock nodule. Electricity comes up often. I'm not sure magnetism has come up very often, so that might be something not explored yet.
Oh.
My dog is giving out to me because I'm not paying attention to him.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay. So you said that you need to recharge, aka sleep, etc. So what are you powered by or on, or what's your source of energy? If having so few living component, I assume it's not food.
Yeah. I think that I have an energy module that I shove, debris into, almost like trash,
Mm.
and it converts it into energy. So, I need to make that more specific. Maybe it needs to be metallic, not, just garbage or, tree bark or something like that, but something metallic. This module will convert the metals into the material that I need, into the energy that I need.
Cool. Before the metallic part, you were almost an eco-friendly cyborg.
How about spent Numenera? Is that too rare to be useless, or?
Well, Numenera vary quite a bit. Some of them are plastic, some of them are organic, or something like that. So, I, 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 hmm. I don't want it to be like Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future, where you just shove a bunch of garbage, banana peels in. It seems like it needs to be more for specific in order to be something that you could eat.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm looking over here and seeing we have some names. We have some pronouns. Quill sounds like for Donna. How would we say your character's name, Stephen?
Oh, Roan O.
Roan O. Okay. Simon, do you have an idea for your character's name?
I'll take one that you've put in the chat. Ushant.
Okay. Ushant. Do you know what pronouns Ushant uses?
I think I'll use they, them.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. Any further questions about character creation before I maybe plop you in the middle of a scenario?
So you alluded to, this might be early to talk about this, but you
Okay.
alluded to pushing players in a particular direction. And I see at the end of the playtest document or the Playstorming document, there's information about advancement in XP.
Yes.
And to me, that's usually one of the strongest ways you can say this is the direction I envision you playing, is what you get XP for. So
Yes.
how do you get XP in this?
You're supposed to tell me, Steven.
Okay, so I would suggest if you're pushing this game towards exploration and community driving, community building, that's how you get XP.
Absolutely.
So I'd suggest that you get XP for finding something new, and you get XP. Probably, I would have end of session questions that say things like, what did you do to help the community or to help build your village or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so I haven't played Mutant Year Zero, but it sounds like we're going for something a little bit similar to that, where you have this community, you go out and find stuff, and you bring back to your community to try to improve it. So helping your, I like end of session questions. That's straight from Dungeon World, right? I'd love to roll with that.
Or do you have like keys? I know I'm a big fan of as well. Or in combination. I know, say in the Sprawl, they have both actually, right? They have end of mission and kind of keys to generate XP.
And I'm also going to say, to sway back the other side, I really, really like small system, how the GM can just mess up with the characters if they accept that XP to.
Yes.
I really like that.
The GM intrusion mechanic, right?
But that was before I knew PBTA. So
yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like I like the GM intrusion thing. The way like I'm just gonna step in here and shake things up. I was wondering because like if that was something we could bring into PBTA, because usually that's just what happens on a 6-.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of baked into that concept. But you're thinking
to a certain extent, what you're describing in PBTA on a 6-, the GM intrudes and the player gets XP. I mean, that's kind of the same thing.
So are we thinking XP on a fail might be fun to have too?
I always liked XP on a fail, but even if we don't use that, you could still, even on a success or something like that, you could still offer a bad outcome to the player in addition to their success, but you give them an XP.
Let me ask you this then. My initial plan was like, look at one of the, because I think it'd be really cool if this system would allow GMs to take some of these cool adventures and modules made for Numenera off the shelf and still play this game using them without having to do too much conversion. That would be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So I was planning on just trying one of the example ones in the book and just running y'all through that. So do you want to do that, or do you want to do some community building? Describe the community that you're trying to improve. Do we want to have scenes in your village? And then what's exciting for people today?
Personally, I think trying a Puritan adventure or scene of a Puritan adventure will be like a good test to see if the system goes well into the ninth world.
And I agree. I think that by running a pre-written adventure, you'll learn what from this system fits in with the existing Numenera adventures, as well as being able to see what doesn't fit. And I'm always a big fan of stealing things when possible. So if they've got great ideas for adventures, then I think that would work out well. Yeah.
Okay, we could do that then. So we're going to be trying out this this adventure is called. Hold on, I'm at the wrong one.
Sorry, Michael. Just before we start in on that, I'm just looking at the clock, and we're an hour and 25 in. Do people want a break for 5 or 10 minutes, or how do people feel about that?
A break will be cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Joe, do we want to take our long break here to give ourselves a chance to de-stress and declutter, or we want to do like a 5 or 10?
Okay.
Yeah.
maybe I'm being too nitpicky here.
I'm
7
fine with a
minutes.
longer break. Let's do that.
Okay.
Cool. So when should we be back, Dano?
So like 15 minutes. Is that long enough for you guys? So I've got 23 past. So I guess 38, 40 ish.
Cool.
Aim for at least. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks. See you in a few.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. Any questions that came up during the break that you'd like answered before we start our adventure? Cool. Hopefully they'll come up soon. So you've been tracking these creatures for the past few days. Your local community has been calling them gazers. They're these small floating metallic spheres, probably about, the size of a human head. You've managed to sort of track them to their nest. That's what you've been looking for. So it's pretty clear to me why they asked Quill to go. And I could see why they would also suggest Rono to go, as they have this sort of connection with, puppy, automatons and metallic beings. But I'm really curious why Ushant has been asked to come. Is this something that your monastic order has tasked you with? Is this something that your monastic order is contracted to do?
I think so. The later one, the monastic order is contracted to do. I think one of our creed and why we train to be not in tune with gravity is to be explorers, to reach places that most cannot reach.
I see.
So that doesn't mean that it's a good thing that they contracted me. No, well,
I mean, is it possible that the monastic order has been affected by these gazers in some way? Maybe they're like the client and the kind of harmed party in some way.
that might be it.
Did your leader have a vision that this was important?
Yeah, let's call it initiation of some sort.
Oh, okay, cool.
I don't see myself as being a veteran of this monastic order, so I still need to prove myself.
Yeah, got to earn a few more tattoos.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you've been tracking these, Quill. What distinguishing feature do they have that allows you to track them? Is there some sort of smell? Is there a sixth sense going on? How have you been able to keep track of these things?
I think we described them as metallic spheres, right?
Mhm.
So maybe they're just really reflective.
Ooh.
And maybe like on the ground level, there's a lot of jumbling up of terrain that makes that not a big deal, but maybe from up high, someone who might have an affinity with high flying vultures might be able to track them like that.
Very good. So it's Runo, is that right, Stephen? Or is it Rono?
Rono.
Rono. Have you been able to get any sense of communication from these spheres? Have you been able to talk with them at all?
So we've been traveling for quite a while. I don't think that we've gotten close enough that I can directly talk to them, but I think there is some buzzing there, almost like you hear conversation in the distance.
Okay, very cool. Well, you might be in luck now because you believe you've tracked them back to their nest. From some brambles that you're able to hide in, you're able to see this large crater is sort of jutting up out of the landscape. It's about 20 feet or 20 meters across, so about 60 feet or so. And you can see a number of these gazers, like 4 or 5, kind of swarming and buzzing around the crater like flies around a dead body, right? You just see them there. So it looks like
I'm
this is
going
their
to.
nest. I was just saying this looks like this could be their nest where they're originating from.
So I think I'm going to try to slip up and see if I can't listen to them.
Indeed. Okay. So let's talk about the stakes a little bit, because that's what we do in World of Dungeons. We say, how could this go wrong?
Right.
I think some difficulties you may have could be being able to parse what they're saying individually instead of just coming across as a cacophony. But you might be able to get some snippets if you get like a middle success. On a failure, you're probably drawing attention to yourself and your companions. What sort of information are you hoping to hear?
Why these spheres had been traveling out in our direction.
Okay.
Are they a threat?
Very cool. Okay, so you're going to be rolling. You have some variances that come into play here. Obviously, Technopath.
So it'd be 2d6 and then plus 1d6 for Technopath.
Yes, and keep the 2 highest.
Okay. Yeah. And I rolled 8.
Okay. So yeah, you're not going to draw attention to yourself just yet. But it's a little difficult to understand what they're saying. It's almost like trying to like decipher what a colony of bees is trying to say. You get the sense that these creatures aren't necessarily very intelligent. But you're hearing what they're searching for. And you hear them say, seal the breach, seal the breach. That is the primary concern of them, seal the breach. So maybe they're looking for some kind of material that could be a sealant, but there's a breach.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Do I get this from communication just amongst many of them, or are they talking towards one central figure?
Very good. I think that the way that they're sound, it's almost like they're repeating an order. Like they've been told, seal the breach. And so it's like, okay, seal the breach, seal the breach. And you kind of hear that more from ones that are like kind of traveling away from the crater. You hear them in passing say, seal the breach.
I see.
It's too difficult to hear what they're saying when they're all together.
That makes sense. Okay. And I'll let the rest of them know.
Yeah. So with the way that this crater is shaped, it kind of mounds up a little bit. So from your position here, you can't really see into it quite yet. What would you do? I see you're muted, Dono.
Yeah, I was just about to wonder, like, obviously, like, there's a crater and we can't see into it, but is there any high vantage point or any cover that would allow us to get really, really close? Or is it, kind of moonscape kind of?
Let's do a fortune roll. I'm going to re-roll this 6-sided die, a 2. So I'm going to say not really. You're in a sort of a plain kind of area, almost like a meadow even out here. I should probably roll on this oddity table to tell you how weird this meadow is. But yeah, from where you're sitting, you don't really see opportunities to get a vantage point. You would probably have to get closer and risk making yourself aware to this group of gazers. in order to get a look on the inside of the crater. I wanted to ask Ushant, how eager are you to prove yourself?
I am eager, but I think I'll read past the stage that I will do anything to prove myself. Ushan knows that he needs to show restraint. That might be like his previous trial. So now he's more at the competent stage. He needs to show that he's competent and can do the job. So eager, yes, but not head first eager.
Okay, so you're not necessarily planning on running into that crater right away and proving yourself.
Not without a plan.
Okay, so maybe Quill is our planner here.
Yeah. So here's a question about Beast Shaper, right? Like, am I still roughly human-ish sized, or can I like go down to scorpion level or up to elephant level? What's the kind of region of reasonableness on that?
That's a good question. I think that's entirely up to you, really, because we don't necessarily have degrees of success.
Yeah.
So if you think it'd be advantageous to be the size of an elephant, you probably could pull that off. Yeah, it's up to you.
I mean, I think if we want to get a general good look at things, a bird might be the way to go, right? To get a top-down view, and maybe pick out a few details like that. And
you have an affinity for the solar vultures, right?
Yeah. So maybe I'll change into one of those, and see what I can see.
Yes. So I will say, you're going to get a view of this crater no matter what. But on a failure, you're probably not going to like what you see. And on a mixed success, you're probably going to gain the attention of these gazers. But it sounds like they'll probably be mostly focused on you. So you could, at the very least, possibly be a distraction to your companions.
Yeah. If I can lead them away in extremis, that might be plan B. Okay. So I'm rolling, 2d6 by default, and then 1 extra for the variance.
Sure.
And it's total or 2 best?
2 best.
2 best. So that is an 8.
Okay. So you take off in flight, and you're taking the form of the solar vulture, right? What does it look like when you transform into your beast shape? What does that transition look like?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I described it as starting with the skin. So I think the the hairs on the arms start to become really accentuated, right? And maybe you even see those kind of quill connections start to spread out and then suddenly become feathers, and then I guess it starts with the wings and then goes full body, and maybe there's like a strangeness in the middle where it's like, oh, he's like a human with feathers and he's getting a little bit smaller, and then the skeleton kind of really painfully kind of turns the right shape, and then kind of the head is maybe in the middle of that. And then, you've got a Volsol, as we're calling them now, just standing there before he just jumps off to get altitude.
Roanoke, seeing this transformation, how does that make you feel?
It's interesting. It makes me curious. It's interesting to see someone who can manipulate their body in the same way that I do, but it takes a long time to mechanically change myself. So I'd always kind of thought that my mechanical body would be more adaptable. However, Quill's body is infinitely more adaptable than mine is.
Very interesting. So that's on your mind as you see Quill start to soar up above this crater to get the bird's eye view of what's inside. And you can feel that sun on your feathers from coming up above, and that sort of lifts your spirits. But as you come over the crater, you start to feel a similar warmth on your belly, as if another source of light is coming up and invigorating you. So you're feeling great. And as you look in the crater, you see there seems to be this pool of silvery moonlight down in the center of the basin. But you see like almost like a small crack in that pool. And from above, it almost looks like a cat's eye to you with that sort of slit pupil. And you see like 4 or 5 of these gazers kind of like coming in and out of that little fissure. And you see a couple with legs too, kind of like crawling in and out of that fissure. But once you're up in the sky, you see some of these gazers start to turn their attention toward you. And even now, Rono, like, even if you weren't necessarily actively listening to these gazers, you start to almost hear them shout in your mind, "Intruder, intruder, intruder." And a number of them start to fly up towards Quill. Ushant, you see this happening. This could be an opportunity for you to slide in while they're focused on Quill as the Volsoul, but maybe you want to try a different approach. What do you think you're going to do?
I think my 2 options are either take opportunity of the distraction, like you said, or help Quill, because it's going to be a rough patch. I think I'll let Run. How do you say the name?
Rono.
Runo, okay. I'll let Runo take care of the technical skills here of what the gazers are doing, and I will go to the aid of Quill.
So are you trying to coordinate a team effort here?
Maybe my first thought was to maybe jump on some of the flying gazers are going at Volsoul. Not attacking yet, just try to latch on one of them. Maybe if I can maybe study them or check them from closer before doing anything drastic. That would be cool.
So you're hoping to like deactivate them,
maybe
them.
maybe not resorting violence yet, but I want to be up there.
Okay, get in the mix. All right,
Yeah.
Rono, what's your plan?
So I think that Ushant said, hey, see if you can get inside. So I think I'm going to take advantage of this distraction and see if I can go over the lip and get close to whatever the object is inside.
Well, let's first see if Ushant is able to make this even more distracted, so he can slip in without instance. I think it's one thing to gain the ire of the gazers. It's another thing to gain the ire of gravity. And you have pretty good control of that, but I'm visualizing you hopping on top of these metallic spheres, getting higher and higher into the air. And at a certain point, your skills can only take you so far, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, you're going to give us a big roll though. You get 4 dice, I imagine, right?
I'm pretty sure that is the variance in skills for dice.
So tell us what it looks like when your anti-gravity artifact kind of activates and you jump on these spheres.
Do I do that? Okay. It's going to be sound a little cheesy, but it's like the Superman like effect on the ground first. I increase the gravity to have a lot of power on my legs, and then release it at once and jump.
Okay, so you see like a little bit of the ground like flattening beneath
Yeah,
you and
exactly.
cracking. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and roll for us and tell us what your 2 highest dice were.
I lost the. I'll roll for party. There it is.
And don't forget you have that shock nodule if you ever need it.
Yep. And that will be a 7.
Wow, with 4, your highest 2 came to a 7.
Yep.
Okay, I like that. So you're in the mix. Quill is no longer the sole target of these anti-intruder measures. But you have sort of escalated their defensive protocols, so to speak. And now I'm imagining you kind of grabbed one and you're using its levitation to keep yourself floating. And you look into it and you can see it has this eye that's sort of opening, this sort of there's a word for it, but like when like a piece of metal like sort of spirals open, right? And you can see like this light is sort of starting to gather, and it might be becoming a very powerful beam very soon. And you're sort of stuck with the idea of letting go, diverting the energy beam. You're not quite sure. But I think we have them split a bit. So you're flying around, Quill, and you've kind of got 2 now that are looking at you, and you see that same aperture. That's the word I was looking for, opening up, and this beam starting to focus. And you can feel that light, and it was feeling so great a minute ago. Now, not so much.
The price of your happiness may go down as well as up, right?
Yes. But I want to move over to Rono real quick because you're actually starting to slide down the crater wall now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you kind of see that same thing as you step over the lip. It looks like this, almost like a pool of moonlight down there at the bottom, this silver glow. And as you're able to slide down without any attention from the gazers. They've all gone to deal with this more imminent threat in their mind. As you come up to this crater, though, probably about like 3 or 4 meters wide, right? You see this reflection of yourself in the face of what looks, now that you're closer, to actually be a slight sphere. It's actually a little concave from where you're standing, as opposed to like a puddle. What about your reflection is so mesmerizing to you?
I think it's the clarity. I would expect that in this kind of landscape there to be dust and things that have obscured and maybe even a distortion due to the shape of this reflective dome. However, in this case, it's almost crystal clear.
Yeah, and you're looking at this reflection and you realize you've never even seen yourself this clearly before. It almost seems clearer than if you look at your own arm. Looking at the reflection of your arm seems to be even clearer to you. You're actually finding it quite mesmerizing, to the point where you're starting to forget like why you even came down here to this crater, what your mission is just marveling at your appearance. you're probably going to have to roll for that, but as a way to kind of break yourself out of that illusion or tantalizing image. I want to check in with Quill, though. You have wings. You see laser, or I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to say laser. That's in the Numenera rules. You're not allowed to say laser. You see these beams starting to take form. You can tell that you're in imminent danger of being the target of those, and you see your friend Ushant dangling from one of these floating spheres. What's your play here?
So I think I'm going to thread the needle, right? So there's two of them on either side of me, and I'm going to kind of, tuck in my wings and kind of dive in between them, picking up speed, and on a 12 plus or whatever, I'm hoping that they shoot themselves out of the sky. But
Yes.
At the very least, they might pause, unless their machining is perfection. They might pause if they think they're in danger of shooting each other.
Yeah. So you're at least trying to buy time, right?
Yeah.
And I think from your vantage point, you can see Ron-O has sort of paused here for a second. And you're waiting for them to like get a move on, give you some kind of direction. They're stuck for a moment. What about Ushant? Are you leaving them to hover for now and planning on catching them at a later time, or leaving them to their own devices?
Yeah.
You described your size. I don't know if you can really carry a fully grown human. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know.
Oh, you're catching me? I didn't get that.
Or are you not?
No,
It's okay.
That was not my intention. But if worst comes to worst, maybe I can arrest your fall.
You know they can defy gravity, so
yeah, I'm pretty sure I can arrest my fall. My own fall.
All right, so you're going to trust in the capabilities of Ushant and try to use your maneuverability to buy you some time, if not the good old-fashioned TIE fighters blowing each other up situation. Exactly. Okay. So here's a good question, playstorming-wise. For animal shape, using that same animal shape, are you still using your variants here, you think?
It seems a bit strange to say that I always get the bonus whenever I'm doing something in an animal form, right?
Yes and no, because right now you are doing something that you can only do as an animal form, aka flying.
Yeah. So
I think that's where you will draw the line.
And we can look at the description for beast shape that says you have a hard time doing anything that requires self-control, but you have an easier time with all physical actions. So this tactic may be something like
it's like not instinctual. It's a little bit higher.
You're battling with your instincts here.
Yeah.
The fight or flight response is probably like, run away.
I mean, on the other hand, I'm kind of, this is a precise kind of physical activity. So I'm kind of swooping to pick up speed and to stay away from them. So, I mean, I could see it go either way. I don't know.
Let's say for this one, that doesn't give you a bonus.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I don't think anything else applies. It's not animal handling. It's not navigation. So I'm just rolling 2d6.
Okay. On a failure, you're getting XP.
And fried. Okay, I rolled an 11. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you that cool description of the gazers like turning on each other. The 12 plus, they probably blow up, but at the very least, they're dazzled as we see them start to rotate those beams, the crossing of the streams, so to speak, kind of disrupts their sensors for a moment here, and
it could be kind of, the way when you have like a laser sight or a laser beam like hitting a camera, and their kind of targeting system gets a bit frazzled, right? Something
Indeed.
like that.
So for a moment they're kind of dazed, and you can kind of tell by the way that they're floating, they sort of like lose that consistent hovering, and then they're going like that. And you can tell, Ushant, because you're holding on to one. It looks like your opportunity may be here. How do you disengage yourself? I won't make you roll for this, but I just would like to hear what it looks like on screen.
Okay. How do I disengage myself? I think it will be simple letting go. I just let go with kick to the back and backflip, and then landing back on the ground. Simple as that.
Very cool. So, do we see like a little softening as you land, as like your anti-gravity kicks in?
Yeah, definitely ground like something hovering for the ground. The dust kicks out just right before I land, and I land softly on the ground.
So as the two of you land, you're kind of in that same position now of looking down at your reflections here. Stephen, let's have you roll real quick to see if you can break yourself out of that. What's the term? Glamour, right?
Yes. So I think that's going to be a straight roll, because I don't think my variance or any of my skills apply.
Okay.
Oh, and I rolled a 3.
Oh, well, I was going to say that your success here might save your companions from a similar fate as well. But yeah, I think we're just going to have that be the group roll real quick. Tell me a little bit about Quill, your reflection here, why it's so mesmerizing. Have you returned to human form? Do you see something else in this reflection? What do you see?
I guess the kind of little drawback of being in beast form, I would like to kind of hook onto that, so it's almost like I'm not changing back into human form, and I'm mesmerized as if I am just working on kind of pure animal instinct. This is something unnatural and something, that the Volsols wouldn't be so familiar with. And just, standing there like on this ice skating rink, just mesmerized by this other vulture, right? That is looking right back at me, right? I do not recognize my reflection.
Yeah, just like the birds that fly into the windows because they think it's another bird.
Yeah. So I think that fits.
Ushant, I imagine you spend a lot of your time in quiet meditation.
Yes.
Focusing inward, not focusing on your physical body, but for a moment now you find yourself anchored to your physicality, and your reflection, you realize maybe for the first time, is beautiful. What is so beautiful about your reflection here?
I will go with the tattoos that I have earned, and everything that I have worked through is physically on my body, physically marked on my body. And I only receive, before I only received them, like it's normal for me to receive to have them, but now I really look at them and I'm really proud of myself and mesmerized by that.
I think you even maybe start to see your tattoos almost animate themselves to like showcase these times where you've proven yourself, right? Almost like you're watching like an animation of that time. So I'm going to put up my my yellow light safety tool here because I'm going to describe the three of you as a consequence of that 3 minus being so mesmerized as to kind of lose a little bit of control here. At any time, if you're feeling like this is like uncomfortable, you can hit the X card and we could try a different way. But the way I'm seeing this is these little gazers with legs are coming up out of that crevice, and you don't really mind that they're there. You feel great looking at this reflection of yourself. And even when they start to grip your arm and kind of pull you into the crevice, right? You're like, that's fine. You go down this crevice. It's actually like a chute almost. It's at an angle. And as you're going down, you're still seeing your reflection in the walls of this fissure. And it's fine. Everything feels great. You're being led down this chute. You find yourself waking up suddenly when you are dumped into a pile of trash. There's all this discarded things around you. You see a lot of like little bits of material, fabric, metal, even like wood and organic kind of materials, and also bones. Plenty of bones down here as well. And yeah, you kind of snap out of it a little bit once you are removed from your mesmerizing reflection. And you see that there's a number of these little gazers on legs, but they're not really giving you that much attention. You see some of them are casting this sort of scanning ray of light over some of these bones. You see one has kind of gone over to this like piece of driftwood essentially, and you see little robotic tendrils and arms coming out of this spherical body, and they're sort of clawing away at the wood and the organic material, carving it almost. Well, you found yourselves in a trash heap. What do you do next?
Can you just remind me what was the goal of our escape out of our mission?
You had been asked to track down this gazer's nest and try to get rid of them, basically, get rid of that issue, however you saw fit. But now that you find yourself in what could be an ancient ruin, you might also have an opportunity to salvage something, bring something back to your community.
All right.
So I'm going to try to talk to these spherical walkers and see if I can get some kind of communication going.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and roll for that.
Okay. So that'd be 2 dice plus 1 for techno interface.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a 9.
Okay. So as you approach one of these gazers, again, these ones are walking on legs instead of hovering. It's a little bit easier to communicate with it than the others because they seem a little bit more independent. And what would you ask? It's sort of, you can tell it kind of the way its limbs are arranged. It's turned to look at you. It stopped its task.
Yes. I ask. I basically I walk up to it and I say, "Why did you bring us here?"
Oh, we must cleanse. We must keep the vault clean.
I understand. How can we exit?
Oh, well, You appear to be clean. If you are able to leave, you may exit at any time.
How do you exit?
And it kind of turns, and you see this little laser pointer, so to speak, point at that hole you came out of. And it said, "Through the breach."
I see. And what is the purpose of the cleaning?
Well, we must keep the vault sterile. We must keep it clean. We must seal the breach.
Since I am clean, I can see the vault?
Perhaps I should check. And you see this sort of wide beam of green light start at your feet and slowly go up. And
I think at that point, I'm going to, as it starts to scan me, I'm going to tell it, I'm going to suggest that, so I'm going to give it an order, basically. I'm going to tell it, there's no need to do that. You can go back to your work.
Oh, are you a guardian?
I am a guardian.
I see. I apologize. I am not familiar with this iteration.
So I'm going to tell them I'm going to go about my work. I will talk to you later. And I'm going to return to the others.
Oh, are you going to extricate the interlopers?
I'm going to deal with the interlopers and see what needs to be done to seal the breach.
Very well. And it turns back to this this like human bone, and you can see like there's still like flesh and tendons and muscle sort of attached to it. And off screen you hear like scraping and like sizzling.
Yeah. So I go back to them and I explain the conversation that happened in hushed tones. And then I tell them, that we are in we're in pretty big danger because they are eliminating all organic matter, it seems, and it would be a good idea if we could get out of here. They did reference something called the vault, and I might be able to see about going deeper, but it would be dangerous.
So we're going deeper.
Obviously. Though, as a rule, I'm against the extirpation of interlopers. It sounds very painful.
Yeah. I mean, you can see the bone that he was working on. It doesn't look good.
Yeah. Well, for now, the exiting part is not the complicated one. If it's just through the breach, I think between me and Quill, we have more than enough ways to get out of here. But yeah, the vault.
So as you look up in this room you're in, it's sort of like a cylindrical shape. You can see up on the wall that kind of hole that you came down, and you kind of look. It seems almost as if there's no end to the height of this room. There's this sort of soft light around you that seems to come. It's hard to determine what the source of it is, but it sort of ends as it goes higher, almost as if you were looking down a hole, right? But you do see on one wall is a door that's like on the ground floor. That probably leads deeper into the vault.
I was just, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. I was just thinking about something.
Yeah.
I made a roll and failed it at 3 minus, or at 6 minus. I rolled a 3. And you said, okay, I'm going to make that a group roll. I think that would be a good time for the group intrusion or something, and everybody gets XP. Because I already got XP, right?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. See, I was thinking like I don't want each of you all to have to roll for the same task, but doing a group intrusion, that's fun. Yeah, I like that. I would love to make a note of that for the potential to give other people XP for receiving the same punishment that you did for
Okay.
your failure.
I put that down.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
That might be like a GM move, so to speak.
yeah, like in say Blades in the Dark or whatever, when you have a group action, and then like everyone joins in the fate of it, but there's only one role, and that's a really neat piece of tech. That certainly would have solved so many problems with group stealth roles in any other system I'd previously played. So like having it explicitly be, hey, you're gonna be leading this group action or whatever the terminology is. But yeah, I think like fictionally it made a lot of sense, but like mechanizing that I think is definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, that always helps soften the blow of like, well, I didn't get a chance to see if I saw through my reflections. So, but you get XP. Okay, well, all right. So you're planning on heading maybe deeper into the vault, maybe hoping to salvage some Numenera, bring something back to the community and say, not only did we deal with this nest, but look what we found. It's a doohickey. Very cool. So as you're leading your companions, Rono, you see one of these gazers, these sanitation gazers, kind of turn towards the group of you, but then the one you spoke to said, "Don't worry, they are a guardian. they're extricating the interlopers." And see the sphere nod and go back to its grisly task. Yeah, so.
As we leave, I turn to the others and I want to see if they think this is a good idea. They seem to have an issue with organic material. Would it make sense to cover you with inorganic material, so that maybe you might be able to pass more easy? I think I got lucky in suggesting to one of them that I was in charge. I don't know that I can do that if we find others. So could we take some of the material that they left here? The bits of whatever it is, the trash, the metal, the pieces, the fabric, and cover you with it? Make a disguise? What do you think?
It could work, but I'm not comfortable with this.
I see.
Tell us more.
Well, I think it goes with like I said, I'm very clothed. I written in the description clothed with tattoos, so covering them is not part of my culture.
What would Rono have to offer you in order to accept this blasphemy?
Or do you have an alternative? I mean, could you hide well, or hide from these spheres?
I can definitely try. I might be not averse to carrying a disguise in emergencies, but that will not be my my first. I mean, if it's the only thing that's staying between me and death, that's another point.
Okay, how about this? How about once we get we start to leave this place, could you take off a segment of the wall, like the wall plating, and then as we're traveling, if we run into them, you can just step behind it, so you appear to be part of the wall.
I like that. I really like this. You're muted.
How about you, Quill? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think Quill has any problem with that. Like, wearing clothes to get through an environment is just part of living on the ninth world to him. So if we can get enough material, tinfoil sheets or whatever it turns out to be, that's fine by me.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to search this pile, try to salvage like a Numenera or cipher from it, I'd probably ask you for a roll. But if it's more of just making like a quick costume, so to speak, I don't think there's a roll required for that. You just kind of have this like strange ghillie suit, so to speak, of like scraps of reflective material and plastic, steel, and things like that. Okay.
And I tell both of them, I say, these things tried to scan me, and as soon as they did, I told them to stop. And I'm not sure they would. I'm not sure that you telling them to stop would be the same, but it might be a good option to prevent. I'm not sure this will hold up to a scan.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, you mentioned wall plating, and as you step out into, through the doors, you find yourself kind of stepping into what looks to be some sort of city. There's these towering buildings, and as you kind of follow the eyesight up, they're sort of platinum colored, and they're very smooth surfaces. And as you look up into the ceiling, you see this sort of silvery ambient light coming down from this almost like dome shaped structure, and you can kind of see a little bit of that fissure that led into this building behind you. But being out here, it's very strange, because as you look at the height of these towers, the sheer height of them, they most certainly must be taller. They need to be jutting out of the crater. You didn't go that far down that fissure. These buildings, it's way bigger in here than it should be, and that's hard to reconcile. And even as you look at the building behind you that you came out of, it's almost like this building is much larger than the room we were in before. It's hard to reconcile that paradox. You'll see that most of these buildings have a very smooth surface. It's maybe even hard to see entrances, windows, anything like that. They're almost just like towers. But some of these buildings you see are covered in little pinpricks of colored light, almost like stars covering their surface. And the streets here in front of you are this sort of black matte material. But when you step in them, you can kind of feel ever so slightly them giving way under your feet. Not quite like a trampoline, but almost like a rubber mat would feel. And as you step away from them, you see your footsteps, the impression sort of rising back up to this smooth perfection.
Wow.
And it's very quiet.
There are none of the spheres are here.
You don't see any.
Do we see a central focal point? Like maybe a tallest building, or
You can sort of see how the sort of arc of the dome kind of goes down. Some of the buildings towards the center are a bit higher, and as it gets closer to the edges, they get shorter to allow for the height of the dome. But the most distinguishing features are these different colored illuminated towers. In fact, you can see from here, as you maybe kind of look around a little bit more, there's a red tower, a yellow tower, and this one's called the sea tower. So I'm guessing it's sort of like a seafoam colored light. Yeah.
So let's head towards the closest one to see what's going on.
Hmm.
See if we can figure anything out from it.
Good idea.
Okay. Well, according to my map, the closest would be towards the center, or wow, hold on. Lots of weird words. You know, this would be a great time for a 5-minute break
Perfect.
while I get that figured out.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So if you're heading near the closest lit tower, you kind of follow the curve edge of the sphere, and travel clockwise. And you'll see this tower nearby, and you can kind of see, as you're moving around, there's the lit towers are almost like reflected up on the ceiling of the dome, so you can almost navigate yourself by looking up and seeing the towers reflected there. So even if it's hard to see the different towers with these other structures in between you, you can kind of keep yourself navigated that way. But yeah, you come up to this tower. It's covered in this sort of white light, these little pinpricks of light, these stars, all around them. And if you were to try to enter, you'll see a rectangular entrance right there along the street, almost like the doors to a lobby. And it's slightly illuminated behind this kind of frosted glass.
So if I walk up to it, are there any machines nearby or anything that I could interface with?
Nope. And as you approach the doors, with a soft, they just open up, slide into the walls behind them. You could enter in easily.
I'll step on in.
As you come inside, you'll see, kind of, again, the size of this room is not exactly the same as you would have anticipated from the exterior, from the structure that houses it. Across the floor, there's these odd devices. Some of them are as large as a person. Some of them are as large as a house, and they're sort of dotting the ground below you. But visible overhead is this large sphere, and the image of the sphere appears to be a real-time projection of the Earth. Now, there's these clouds sort of covering over it and moving slowly, so it's hard to see everything in close detail, but it's recognizable to you. You probably have never seen a globe before of the ninth world, but it looks planetary.
Do we think that there's kind of any the way it's oriented is it showing our current location anywhere? Is there any kind of sign that some other places are important? Or is it just a very plain depiction?
So you might be able to surmise that the devices that are embedded in the ground here may have something to do with control of the image projected on the sphere.
Okay. So, well, I think the most sensible thing to do right now is to do whatever happens when you first found a globe like this, is pinpoint where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, look, I'm here.
But yeah, I wonder if have any of you ever seen an image of your world before? Have you seen some other piece of technology? Has your monastic order sort of have this map? Is it familiar to you at all?
Probably not. As far as I remember from the Mura book, the most of the world isn't even charted. There's just like this one big continent, star shaped, and most of the world is like just tiny fraction of the south point of the star.
Remember, sorry, when you depicted the kind of outside of this building, you kind of said there was lots of kind of points of light like stars.
Mm-hmm.
Can I make a suggestion that that's the stars that we see, and therefore, we can work out, at this point in time in the day, if we are here, then, in kind of cooperation with the others, maybe looking at features on the globe, we can kind of work that out a little bit. Is that too much of a leap, or?
I think if anyone could, it would be Quill. Someone who's been able to see from high above what the world looks like. That's probably the most familiar image just for you.
Yeah.
That bird's eye view, except this is more of a God's eye view, right? And navigating by stars, I think you could try to coordinate those things in your mind.
Okay, yeah. So I guess I'll roll an extra die for navigation, right? That's one of my key skills. I don't think the variance. I mean, the variance kind of gives me the context to even make the roll. I don't think it's going to give me a bonus.
Right.
I got a 9.
Okay, so yeah, for the first time you're able to kind of orient yourself in this globe. I think there's certain like landmarks that you can maybe see from space that you can say, I wonder if that's that one mountain range near our village, right? And maybe that sort of plane could be related to this area where we're in, but it's still very zoomed out, and you kind of, maybe as you're trying to like puzzle this all out, you lean against one of these devices, and your touch, it sort of starts sending the sphere rotating, and you kind of lose all sense of orientation after that, because you're like, whoa, well, now where are we? But it does at least become clear to you that these devices interact with the sphere's projection in some way.
Just so long as we don't figure out that the world itself has moved when I this kind of God's level feedback loop going on here.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, now that I mention it, that's definitely what's happening, right?
You've just devastated several tidal pools. Yeah. So, do you have, any of you have interest in trying to gain some sort of understanding using this technology? Do you want to try to salvage some of this technology to take home? Do you want to learn more about your home? What do you want to get out of here? What's on your mind?
I think it's worth, since we accidentally bumped into, part of the controls, it might be worth a short period of time to manipulate these controls to see if we can zoom in and see what kind of view we have of our home, of our home area, and a map of the unknown areas around our home would always be useful.
Yeah. So, are you taking this task on individually, or are you asking your companions to go and touch other devices simultaneously and try to coordinate a group orientation of this sphere?
If there's multiple, sorry, Stephen, do you mind?
Oh, no,
Okay.
no, please.
If there's like multiple projection points, maybe like, if you can imagine, we need to manipulate more than one to kind of pinch in to zoom in, yeah, exactly. So maybe we need to experiment a little bit with manipulating all of these projection devices.
I think I also like to do this as a group, and Ushan's contribution might be to try to flick other switches, or if there's another layer of information that we can have, that might be useful.
So, we don't have a mechanic for group actions. What would you propose, Stephen? Or anyone else who has an idea for how we might handle this? Or I
My-
could propose one too.
My idea will be to act like pulling all we have into being one giant character, basically. So if I have a skill that works and he has a variance that works, we roll 46.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Sure. So very, very good chance of success. And failure just means
I did roll a 7 on the.
yeah, that's true. And then the consequences would just apply to each of you, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah, let's just go ahead and pool our die together. So maybe what we would do with a group action is you don't necessarily get those 2 dice for free.
Oh, nice.
Is it like one die per character?
Well, as many as you can offer with your variances and skills.
Okay. So it's like we take those 2 dice out of the equation entirely, and it's just the variances and skills giving pluses. Is that-
Sure. Let's see if we can gather enough to make that worthwhile.
Yes. Okay. So that means I am hindering the process because I have nothing that helps.
Well, you were talking about using your gravity control to reach switches that we couldn't.
Oh, good. I'm afraid of dice.
Yeah.
There you go.
And I can probably contribute a dice from mentally interfacing with the machines that we're dealing with.
Yeah. Navigation to know?
Navigation, probably, yeah.
Yes, definitely.
All right, let's start with 3 then. See what we get.
Does that seem like any one of us could have got 3 dice just by using that single
Yeah,
variance or
well-
skill?
Yeah, yes and no. I think Renault. Oh, I can never remember the same name. Steven's character could have done the three dice on his own. Maybe you too. I could not have just having the power to go flip another switch will not have been enough, in my opinion.
I think it maybe also could be related to the outcome in terms of scale and fictional
Yeah.
positioning.
It's kind of a scale problem, right?
Yeah.
If to say, oh, this is a problem bigger than any one person could even begin to tackle. So you're on the coping with it is on the table as a group.
Yes. Okay. So 10 plus. What would you most love to come away with knowledge wise?
I think Stephen's
map.
suggestion of like seeing blind spots for our community on the map that we haven't been able to breach or cross, knowing what's on the other side, or identifying resources nearby that we have no idea exist. That kind of stuff sounds about right.
Cool. On a mixed result, we're probably going to hear from those guardians that were mentioned earlier. On a failure, I think you're going to learn some terrible truth from the sphere.
Well, if you want to like write sometimes the way you do like a discern reality or whatever in Dungeon World would be, you learn a truth you wish you hadn't.
Exactly. What's the worst thing you could have learned about this situation? Yeah. So let's get those dice on the table. Not sure who's rolling here. Maybe I should refresh my page.
Right. Yeah, I'll roll. I've got 3d6 on the roll for your party anyway, so I'll just re-roll those. Ooh, I got a 10.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, as you're manipulating the image, you start to zoom in, and it's still the same sphere size kind of floating above you, almost like at a planetarium, but like inverted maybe. It's again, it reminds you, Rono, of like looking at your reflection and how high def and clear it was, because you're able to zoom in for a moment all the way to your position in this room. It zooms
Okay.
in. It goes through the crater, through that dome, through the building, and you see reflected the three of you looking up at each other.
We kind of wave. And
Right. And then you're able
That's precise.
yes, you're able to zoom out. And yeah, like you can take notes, you can scribble on like some of this material you've salvaged, a basic map, interesting locations to look at. Um, now that you know sort of the depths of the function of this machine, do you want to push your luck? And is there something in the community that you want to get a closer eye on?
There's this woman. Oh no.
Yeah, discard that. But I mean, yeah, like that's in the back of your mind, the power of this machine, what it could be used for.
I wonder if we could see if we could find some way to store this rather than, just. I think we scribbled down and scratched some stuff on some paper or on some material or something. But I'm curious if we could go a little bit further and actually store it, not the entire size of this machine, but in a small version.
Yeah. So, these machines you've been interfacing with, some of them have knobs, switches, dials, levers, and some of them have these sort of like crystal globes that like you're able to kind of move your hand over. You feel them slightly rotate under your palm. You could probably try to salvage this Numenera in a way that you could use it as like a map or a projection of this specific image that you've catered, that you've
Zoomed in
created.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be a roll. And you
Sure,
can
I'll do
see
that.
if that goes well. Yeah. Consequences probably being relatively clear.
Yeah. So I thought on the previous roll that we did, the group roll, what would happen if we got a 12 plus? Did we break the machine? Maybe we got what we wanted, but the machine also broke while we were doing it. That's an interesting thing.
Well, it wasn't a cipher, so it was not going to overload.
True, but I like that idea that, we don't really know what we're doing and you could potentially break something even though you got what you wanted.
That's true.
So to see if we can store some of this or take it home, that would be 2d6 plus machine plus interfacing to machines.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see what that looks like. I got a 7.
Okay.
Just barely.
So you managed to wrest some components out of this device, but it's not done in a very peaceful way. I think it takes a little bit of physicality, a little bit of violence. It sort of tears away, almost as if you'd pulled an eyeball out of like something's socket.
There's some wires dangling and they're sparking and
right. And you see the lights in the room, sort of this ambient light that was all around you turns red and starts pulsing. And you hear behind you those doors start to, they're getting ready to close. And because you have an attunement to these machines, you can kind of hear them and speak their language. You hear in this kind of soft, nice subway announcer voice, right? Lockdown initiating. Lockdown initiating.
it's time to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think skedaddling seems like the best course of action.
Booking it. Shall we do this individually or shall we do another group escape roll?
Are we escaping the building? Or are we escaping the entire city? Or what's the kind of level of
As far as
action?
you can tell so far, just the building.
Okay.
If it's just the building, it will be a group roll. If it's the city, I think it will be more interesting to do it individually.
Yeah, we'll see what it looks like once you get outside.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, everybody contribute your die how you think you could help. I know our parkour monk probably has some stuff to contribute. I think you contribute more than one die if you have more than one thing that helps.
So I think I can help with my mechanical body by helping hold the doors and preventing them from closing.
Sick.
I'm not sure Quilla's helping at all. You're just getting out of the building doesn't seem to hit on any of those, and I don't think it's not a thing that I'm taking the time to change into an animal to
Yeah.
just hold on here. I'm going to do this transformation, right?
I'm probably like jumping over Rono, and as soon as on the other side, helping people, helping them go through the doors, so the parkour will be helping.
So I think we have 3 dice. Simon, since you've contributed the most, why don't you roll for us?
This is the bane of any Gauntlet game I have, remembering where I've put the roll for a party tab.
Oh, just gotta hunt through your tabs there.
Guess what? 7.
Hey, okay. You all managed to squeak out just in time. The doors kind of close behind you, and you just slip those metallic fingers out of the way before they're, kind of snapped off. And you see that the lights on the tower have slowly dimmed and turned off. And now it looks like many of these other structures that don't have lights. And the door is no longer open for you. And you can hear, or maybe probably see, from one of these smooth, reflective metallic walls, a figure starts to emerge, almost like if you were to push your fist through like a sheet of nylon, how you can kind of see that silhouette, and this sort of sphere shape, probably about the size of like a boulder, right, is starting to come out of this wall, slowly emerging. What do you do?
I I think okay, so this figure's emerging. I think I will punch it back in. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think for effect I will use my lightning nodule.
Oh, okay.
I think
I was like, do you have a lot of experience punching metal? But using your shock nodule, well, I'll tell you what, it's probably going to work because you have a level 6 shock nodule. Yeah.
so
Looking at your
2d6 plus 6.
I believe so.
You're punching back into the building that we just came from?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
And it's a 10 with plus 6.
Yes. So right in that sweet spot there. Yeah, so this is going to go well for you without any complications. So you sort of punch that dimple, and you feel the nodule kind of. What happens to it? Does it disintegrate? Does it fracture under the pressure? What is that like?
Oh. Yeah.
Does it disperse completely into energy? What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when there's a big shock, it bursts into electricity and follows the flow of the direction that the shot was in.
Yeah, so we were expecting you to hurt yourself punching this rock into a piece of metal, but as soon as that point of contact is made, it sort of disperses into energy, and we see that kind of lightning sparks disperse all over the this unlit steel structure, and we see that dimple kind of and then smooth, and it looks like nothing is coming out to greet you or to retaliate at this time.
That might be a good time to get out of here.
Could be. You still see there's a number of towers illuminated in the distance, but at any time you can cut your losses. Now here's one thing. Sorry, Stephen, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The one thing in the back of your mind, Quill, is that you have found a nice piece of treasure here. This is going to be helpful for your community. But you remember the words that Rono shared with you, what these beasts were saying, seal the breach. You have a feeling that until you're able to do that, you will still have this gazer problem kind of plaguing the community.
I mean, mostly I was saying we have to get out before they do repair the breach, because otherwise we'll be in a different kind of trouble. But helping them to seal the breach or sealing the breach for them might be something to do as well. You know, the people who discover this crater in 500 years' time can worry about it, right? Sure. So we might need to do something a bit drastic when we escape. Yeah.
Cool. So that's your plan for now, is to cut your losses. Is anyone lingering, any lingering greed in anyone's hearts, any ambition?
So if we just leave now, we don't have a way to prevent the gazers from coming back to the community, right? Do we have a way to seal the breach? I was kind of hoping that we could find something down here.
I think if they had something to seal the breach, they would be. Well, we didn't see exactly how they were sealing the breach right now.
Well, they're not smart, so they probably don't know how a lot of things work.
But you were able to control them, so you might be able to direct them to sealing the breach more efficiently.
I would have to be able to tell them how.
Yes.
Maybe. I mean, I'm assuming
you don't know the answer to that.
I'm sorry?
So you don't know the answer to that, so you will have, you can tell how to direct them.
So is it we need to be able to repair this kind of metallic mirror, right? With the rift in it. And that's something I don't think any of our abilities are at all, directed at.
Right. I'm kind of hoping that. Go ahead.
So unless it's a machine itself, is it just a material? Right. I don't know. Is it like an aperture itself? Right. Like those orbs have for their beam weapon, but maybe it's just got a bit stuck. So maybe it's a machine itself.
If that's the case, could we interface from here and see if the sphere that we're in is a machine?
You could certainly do some sort of open your brain-esque listening to the machine as a whole.
Okay.
Listen to the machine.
I like that. I like the open your brain to the machine.
That never goes badly in my experience.
Welcome to park.
So,
welcome to the team, Rono.
Ushant, do you have any tips for Rono in terms of meditation?
Definitely.
What sort of yoga pose or whatever do you instruct Rono to take in order to achieve perfect perception here?
I'm not sure pose would be good in this case because he's mostly machine. But I'm going to describe when I'm meditating what how the energies through my body feels to help me to achieve this. And if you can replicate this in how the energy flows in your own body, that will help.
Ah, that's very good. And the things to visualize, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'll give you an option here. Playstorming. Rolling on the fly. You can give one of your XP up in order to use one of your variances or skills to aid Steven's roll.
Mhm.
So this is different from a group roll. This would be a help roll. It would cost you one of the XP. You got one for the group failure, the group intrusion from Steven earlier. And you could pass along that meditation skill to Steven for this, or to Rono for this attempt. Or it could just be a fun bit of flavor.
Do you?
I'm sorry.
Well, I was asking Stephen if how is your dice roll without me helping right now?
So the 2d6 plus maybe machine.
Yeah, so you have advantage. At least you have 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dono, did you have a
Yeah, I
comment
would.
on
I mean,
that?
just on the kind of idea. Usually, I mean, I think it's a tempting thing to say, burn an XP to do something. But
Mhm.
in my experience, and kind of thinking about it in the past, I'm not sure it's a great idea because you kind of end up just stymieing your process. And I know that's kind of one of my problems with Numenera, as a system anyway, is the kind of forestalling your own long-term development for kind of short-term success. So
So I don't want to derail things too much, but I that's one of the biggest questions I've had about Numenera was I've heard the authors say that a character that spends all of their XP towards advancement is on the same power level as a character that only spends their XP for temporary skills and for dice rerolls. And I've never played in a Numenera campaign long enough to see that. And the people I've talked to about it said, "Oh no, we just do advancement. We don't do we don't spend our XP for all that other stuff." So I'm not sure how that mechanic works. Don't know. Have you actually run far enough to see that it doesn't pan out?
no, no, my kind of gut feeling, and having kind of thought about it for a system on my own, I said it's very tempting, but I don't really like it. Not to say that, I mean, they've obviously played a lot more Numenera than probably all of us put together, so I'm hesitant to say they're wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
I think they are probably right, but my players also did mostly advancements. From time to time, they will take a reroll here and there. No, actually, they will not, because the first time it happened, the person still failed, and second time it happened, it failed again, even with a reroll. So it was only advancements from then. But I can see why they would say that, since you are rerolling and spending resources, you or even using XP to not have GM intrusions, you are better. But ultimately, advancement is something that drives a role playing game. You want your character to improve, to go forward, and if you spend only on rerolls and short turns options, you do not get that progression.
You don't get that character growth.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I mean, do you do something like, because you've lent the power to, it's a bit board gamey, because you've lent the power to another character, you don't get it yourself for the rest of the scene or something like that.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Or some sort of bond mechanic or something we could probably
Bonds are a little bit difficult
look at.
because in a lot of games they just get ignored. They're set up
Yeah.
for character development and then they get ignored. I like the idea that maybe you have a limited ability to help people for this transfer. So, like, you can help with the meditation, but that means that you're focused in on teaching someone else. and not meditating yourself.
Mhm.
You know, that kind of thing. I like your idea, Dono.
Yeah, because at the very least, we have this group action idea, which I think is very helpful and simplifies things. And I wonder if we even need a help role if we have a group role.
Mhm.
Instances where, like, I could see how Ushant's meditation could assist, or their instruction of meditation could assist Rono in this interesting way that kind of has their characters interact in a cool way. Do we want to do anything to mechanically reinforce that, or are some things just cool to happen in the fiction and you leave it be?
Well, let's talk about the idea for the game.
Mm-hmm.
Are you looking to make the game cooperative where people can help each other? If you're looking for a sense of, well, and let's tie that back to community. If you're tying it to community and helping, and being cooperative, it seems like there should be something that drives you in that direction.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think the universe of Numenera, the intention of the game is more toward a more cooperative game anyway.
Yeah.
Could it be just instead of? I'm not sure.
I mean, if I was to kind of almost turn the XP cost on its head, whenever you help someone and whatever mechanic we're using, maybe you're lending that skill or whatever to them for the rest of the scene and you can't use it, but you get XP and so do they. So everyone is learning from this cooperation cycle. And if we're talking about XP driving what the game is about, then that could be kind of a powerful lever to make that happen. And maybe it's too much, I don't know, but...
Well, I mean, to expand on that, so basically if you try to help someone, you share in the penalty, and the benefit is that you could both get XP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
XP on a fail or XP on a success?
I think the helper should get XP on a success. If that's what we're driving towards, is cooperation and community. Because that's telling the helper, no matter what, you should try to help.
Mm.
Yeah, but what will happen is that no matter what, they will help.
Until a fail happens, and then the fail they would share in. And
the helper will not get an XP.
Oh.
Ooh.
If you fail, no XP. Would that be the drawback?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because the whole point of helping is to increase the chances of success, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
I think the XP on success is good, and then the downside is, I got all this help and it didn't help me, and that is in some cases like harmful to your learning, right? Hey, this didn't work at all. Why
so that's really interesting. So what that means is that whenever you make a roll, if someone helps, no matter what, someone's getting XP. If they fail, then the helper doesn't get XP, but the person who failed did. If they succeed, then the person who helped gets XP, but the person who rolled doesn't. They just succeed.
Yeah, and it's not as open-ended as, say, a PBTA help where anyone can help fictionally. You've got to have an ability, a skill or a variance to give. So it's not like everyone's always going to be helping. It's still got to be relevant.
Mm-hmm.
How does that sound, Michael?
I think that there is something there. We probably would need to refine it, and because I don't want it to be super confusing where it's like, wait, who gets XP again? Was it me? Was it you? I succeed or fail? Who gets it then? But I like this idea of trying to reinforce cooperation. Trying to incentivize, reward cooperation, collaboration, helpfulness, putting yourself at risk in order to help someone else, because that's definitely a core theme. So there should be something there. But right now, I just want to see this open your brain.
Okay.
So okay. I'm going to let you have that additional die from Ushant.
Okay.
I do think that you're both in this meditative zone, so you're both going to potentially receive some psychic feedback. if things don't go well. But there's definitely an opportunity for Congress with the machine.
Okay, so let's see what that looks like.
Yeah.
That is an 8
Okay. Wow.
on 4 dice.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting seeing the mechanic in play and how it really can affect things. So an 8. First of all, tell me what this looks like. What form your meditation has taken.
So I think in this case, we're trying to interface to the machine. And Ushant has described what this his normal method of meditation and his orders way of centering and concentrating. So I think that he sits down probably cross-legged, but I'm not sure I can really do that. So I kind of kneel down on the floor, and I think I reach up and I touch the side of the building, looking to, one of the buildings that still has lights on, looking to interface with the community that's here and possibly any interaction that this building has with the rest of the sphere. And I think that Ushant probably sits down and meditates with me as well and helps direct and guide that concentration.
Yeah.
So you both start to, even though your eyes are closed, you kind of start to see this mental image in your minds. And Quill, I don't know what you're thinking about this experience right now, but they are seeing this feeling that deep beneath the ground, that you're merely up here at the tip of the iceberg. This machine, you feel Roanoke, this like resonance with it, this familiarity. You feel as if this vault is more like a head, and beneath you is a body deep in the ground. And you can hear these different automatons. You hear the gazers saying, "Seal the breach." You hear these sanitation gazers saying, "Keep it sterile, keep it clean." And these guardians are saying, like, "Eliminate the intruders." But then you start to hear this like little feedback of another voice that sounds more human in tone, and it feels like it's trying to like quiet those voices. Say, like, "Halt, stop, wait a moment, I'm not done yet." And and then you start to hear this voice saying, "It's mine, I found it, I claimed it, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine." And you're sort of like shunted back into your physical reality after that shouting.
Maybe someone else is already here looking for stuff.
Maybe somebody breached the place and came looking for stuff.
Could very well be.
All right.
Don't know how much time do we have to find out.
So we are aiming to wrap up entirely in about 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, and we'd probably like to save
And
some
we
time
probably
for a
want some
debrief,
kind
right?
of debrief, exactly. So
Yeah. So
in my mind, I was thinking we wrap up the game in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I don't know if that sounds reasonable to everyone else, or whether we could push to 10. I don't know.
Well, I think we can almost like end it now on this like cliffhanger that we'll never see the end, but still. A bit like when you're listening press on forward and the act under fire on the cliffhanger.
Yes. We pull the cord out. The truth. We got a glimpse at the truth. And the man wants to hide the truth from you, man. So, yeah. Awesome. Okay. Whew, that was fun.
Yes. I had something to say about the discussion earlier, but it was okay to go to your role. um, I think however you incorporate help in this or group role or whatever, how you've written the rule right now, it's not if you have like two skills you get two dice. If you have a skill, however, 1, 3 doesn't matter, you just get one dice. Help should be just like another parameter in that, like skill variance or help. If you have two of them, then you go to 4d6, and maybe if you have the three of them, a skill, a variance, and help, then you can go to 5d6.
So yeah, so like technically at this point, with the way we've written the mechanic, you couldn't necessarily use two variances or
Mhm.
two skills on the same roll. You choose one variance, one skill.
Yeah, and I think that, and I like how this is written that way.
And then that also says help can only come from one source.
Mhm.
That way you can't have two people helping for one roll because you can only receive help from one source.
Mhm.
Is 5d6, are we getting into the realm of like too many buckets of dice here? What do you think?
Or do you say something like only one variance and only one skill can apply regardless of where it comes from? Right. So someone can help you skill if you variance or vice versa.
Oh, okay. So that could maybe help fill in the gap. So let's say you have a variance but no skill, which is what we had here with Rono, but Ushan had a skill that could apply. So they could fill in that gap with their helping die.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, that seems.
I think like 5d6 take the best two, although bad rolling will always apply. 5d6 take the best two is a bit silly, maybe.
Yeah, 4 I think is a little bit the upper limit for me there. So
All right. So then yes, definitely help can be used to fill in a gap.
cool. Good ideas. Dunno, you are in charge of debrief here. Take it away. How do you want to handle that?
There's a couple of things. One is, I think, did everyone have fun? Right, that's the
Yes.
kind of bottom line. TLDR. Simon, are you all good?
Yep, definitely fun. And I will say both the role playing part and the figuring out the rule part. I really like that.
Yeah, the same for me. And Stephen, I know you like in terms the kind of next level question. Maybe it's directed more at you, but like in terms of the Numenera experience, does it feel like a Numenera game to you?
Yeah. For me, the Numenera game, I always kind of tried to, push it in a different direction. But to me, it felt like a Numenera game. But I think that's more about the, what's the right word? The trappings that the players and the GM put on things.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Vol Sols that we came up with at the table. That was super weird. The sphere was weird. There were all these weird stuff that we put in place. If we just swapped those out and said, well, you see an entrance to a dungeon, you see a rock flying by, that kind of stuff. It could have been fantasy themed. We just wrapped it in a Numenera style event. We also didn't attack anything, so that took it away from the, murder hobo path.
Yeah.
Well, but you're right. These Numenera is more flavor than really a game or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the kind of flip side of that question is, did the system help or get in the way of making sure that flavor came through?
I don't think so. I think even then the PBTA-ish like this helps bring out the flavor that you want to bring in. So I think it was not detrimental to the flavor.
Okay.
And from my perspective, so with a PBTA type game, a lot of the flavor, there's this framework and a skeleton that appears. However, And that skeleton you put on top of it, move descriptions and all that kind of stuff, and that's where a lot of the flavor comes from in that PBTA game. In a World of Dungeons game, there's much more of everything's open and it's much more flexible. In building the characters, the choices that we had for our natures and our variances and things like that, that really drove the narrative somewhat. Where you're a genetic mutant, you have a modified body, that kind of stuff. So it was almost the character creation seemed to be setting the tone more so than the dice resolution rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Michael, from your point of view, I think at the very start we were talking about Numenera and like the cognitive load for the players and the GM. Was that taken away for you?
So, me personally, I struggle with any sort of game that has like a target number that you personally assign. I know some people love those. For me, it's like figuring out, is this a level 3 danger? Is this a level 4? Is this task a level 5? That always kind of just slows me down and has me like a little bit of latency. So being able to just go with like the classic PBTA range of success with the different complications, right, is a little bit easier for me to work with. I understand too the benefit to having a more concrete like description of consequence, but I did find that easier.
So in my experience, if you're familiar with the genre, the PBTA, that exact dichotomy is like really useful because you know what the consequences of any given action are going to be. Like for an inexperienced GM or someone who's like going to Numenera the first time or something like that, is this a downside to take away that structure?
So you're saying someone who's familiar with Numenera coming to this game for the first time, or vice
versa? Or vice versa, or both,
I definitely think that if we just release this as a World of Dungeons reskin, that sort of puts the onus on the reader to be familiar with World of Dungeons, with PBTA, with Dungeon World, etc. If we propose this as a game that anyone can pick up off the shelf and use, I think it's going to require a lot more advice, GM moves, principles, agendas, that sort of thing. It's funny because Numenera has like great advice for like describing the world of Numenera, and lots of PBTA games have great advice on how to run PBTA. Dungeon World it kind of falls in the middle of the pack for me in terms of describing how to play PBTA, but still, so I wonder, like, do I want to take both of those things and stick them in one little book, or do I want to say this is a game for people who...
Do you want to be a 2-pager or a weighty tome?
Yeah. So I guess I'd ask Louise, like, what do you feel?
Sure.
I mean, to a certain extent, what you're describing, I mean, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. If the Numenera team has created really good descriptions on that you like and that I think fit, then I think I would say I would direct, someone running this game, why don't you, here's how you can adapt that to play in this system. Don't reinvent and include all of that stuff. Just say, go reference this book or something like that. Or here's an example from this book, and how it can be incorporated.
I would say the pitch is exactly how you described why you came up with the system with Louise, right? Hey, I really love the background. I really love what it's saying. But the system doesn't really do it for me. So this is how I simplify it. Because you still want to play Numenera, but you don't want to play those rules,
Yeah. So maybe our vector, our audience, is going to be people coming from Numenera to this system,
Mhm.
as opposed to World of Dungeons to Numenera.
Yeah, I can also see like people liking PBTA and wanting to get into Numenera but don't want to learn the rules.
Yeah, like I've heard loads of great things about the background and it looks really cool, but I don't want to read this 200-page or 300-page book to be able to run it, right?
So, that leads to a question: why World of Dungeons and not PBTA? I think you've answered this, but I wanted to check.
Well, so this isn't actually extremely World of Dungeons at this point. You'll notice there's no harm or HP track.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to get hurt before bringing that up.
There's no stats. There's no gear. There's no magic. It's not very World of Dungeons at all at this point.
You're definitely not going to the OSR feel that World of Dungeon gives.
Well, and it's also not PBTA because, like we talked about before, you don't have playbooks, you don't have moves associated with them that you choose, and what were you thinking in the direction? Do you want to keep it as simple as World of Dungeon, where everybody has the same move, and there's character creation choice differences, or were you seeing this moving more in the direction of creating different playbooks?
Yeah, so I don't think I would go the playbook direction because I like that Numenera sentence structure. The playbook, the closest thing you have to a playbook is your nature,
Mhm.
and that could provide things like maybe name, appearance, like background, how you approach things, but it doesn't really affect you mechanically in any way, other than just to help you describe or color your actions.
Mhm.
The most World of Dungeons thing about this is just that singular resolution mechanic and lack of moves, and that 2 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, 12 plus kind of range.
So you also mentioned earlier at some point that you were trying to stay away from having a class and keep it more open. And whenever you have a playbook that locks you down to a class
Mhm.
and doesn't allow much variation, so that's whenever you mentioned that, I was like, that must be why it's not PBTA and you don't have playbooks. Yeah.
Well, PBTA doesn't need playbooks too. You can work around this, but one thing I think that you should try to work in is the adjective, noun, verb pattern of Numera. I think there's a way to do this without overloading the player. If we had just like pick list, like just no mechanics tied to the adjective or the verb or anything, just verbs and nouns and an adjective, and you form a sentence to get your character, then you use that sentence to choose your skill or choose your variance. Like, oh, I'm someone who rides lightning. Is there variance that allows me to do that? Okay, I'm picking this. I'm charismatic. Is there a skill? Oh, charm. Okay, I'm going to take that skill. So so that you could still use that pattern, which I think is great for Numera, and just not mechanically enforce it, just allow people to pick their options from that sentence.
Yeah, like that noun doesn't have to be a class. It can just be a vocation or whatever. So you could be a monk or a robot or whatever it is. You can. It's still useful to frame the character. Now, I'm sure you'll get players who will fill that in first and use it to build, or they'll pick the skills and then use that to write back. But you're always going to get that kind of player behavior. But I think it's a really neat structure to introduce your character or to start thinking about your character.
So I just realized something. Michael, are you recording this?
Yeah, it's live streamed too.
Oh, good. I knew it was being live streamed, but I wasn't certain that it was being recorded. And I was like, I'm at a point where I can't keep up with all of the comments that we're having here during the stuff. And I was like, oh, I hope you're recording it so that we can, yeah.
Yeah, definitely this last 15 minutes or so, I think I'll probably, and I want to share it with Louise too, be like, hey, here's what
Just put in a recording. Rewatch 15 last minutes.
what is the time code. Yeah, this has been very fruitful discussion. I appreciate that from all of you.
Does anyone have anything else to add that they haven't said yet?
Yeah, I have a few things. So I tried to put a lot of the things that we talked about during the game in the notes, so I think that there's a lot of stuff in there. One thing I saw was the ciphers seem very powerful, where you start out with a level 6 cipher, like in this case. What about the idea of ciphers starting out at level 1, and each time they're used, increasing? So that eventually they go defunct or they blow up or something like that.
They're gonna burn out for sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
That idea also lessens in the numinary games I've played and that I've run. It's difficult to keep up with the cognitive load of I have to constantly introduce new ciphers because players are burning through them quickly, and that's one of the things they kind of wanted to emphasize in the game. I mean, the system's called Cipher. They wanted to push reusing these one-use items over and over and coming up with creative uses for them.
I had the exact opposite in my game. The player just kept stockpiling them. I know there's a point where there's trouble, but they were always trying to just resell them or take advantage of them without using them.
Yep, but being able to basically they go defunct whenever you use them at some point, and it's going to happen eventually. It might happen on that first roll. It might happen. Well, we saw, Simon, you rolled with a +6 cipher, and it, got you a success, but it didn't blow up. I kind of like that idea that they slowly increase, so that means the GM doesn't have to introduce them as often. But they still go bad.
Yeah, I think that's really cool.
I really like that idea, Dono, especially like the idea like it starts at level 1 and that kind of reflects your understanding of it. So like as you use it successfully, you gain a better understanding, get more advantage, but it's also using up its reserves and maybe leading to overload. And, so you know how to use it better, but it's also more dangerous. So you get a bigger advantage, but that could lead to that overload. That's really cool. And then I don't have to also roll for the level and all that stuff.
Right. The other thing that I had written down was about the dice rolling mechanic. So I don't know the probabilities of this, but whenever you in 2d6 you have a bell curve. Whenever you take 3d6 and pick the 2 best, or 4d6 and pick the 2 best, are you missing the interesting failures that would happen in that result? Where player characters are always going to try to succeed at what they want to do. So they're going to say, hey, I want to talk to that machine, and so I'm going to get as many dice as possible. So I don't know what the math is to say this is how often you fail if you're picking the 2 best.
So, I mean, I don't have the percentages in mind right away, but my understanding of it is that you have the bell curve for 2d6. Actually, I think 2d6 is more of like a triangle. And then as you add more dice, it starts to round that curve up. So once you get to 4, I think you basically have like more of a plateau of middle success. So you do have less of a chance of full failure and more of a chance of success full, but yeah.
Yeah, I've never looked at 46 keep 2 because I've never seen it really. So the 3d6 one is pretty well established out there. Yeah, it kind of make that straight fail a little bit less likely, and then kind of I guess averages out the rest of the bell curve a little bit, so that flattening effect. So I can only assume that the 46 is even more so, right? But
I've heard shorthand that 3d6 keep 2 is kind of similar to like getting a +1 or a +2, I think, as like a modifier. So it shouldn't be too much different there.
Yeah.
But you're worried that there won't be enough failure, is basically what you're saying?
Well, that's what I was concerned about. I mean, we only had, during our little 2 hours of play, we had 1 or 2 failures. It seemed like at least from my perspective, it seemed like we were succeeding quite a bit.
Yeah.
So one thing that could do that, so I like failing because it's interesting. So one possibility would be whenever you include these extra variances, or if you have these multiple dice, the consequences could become more dire.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that fits narratively, because why would, me trying harder or me using my skills make it more dangerous? But there's something there about having narrative abilities, making it less likely to fail, but that not necessarily pushing the story forward.
Hmm.
Do you think there could be some, certainly on the variances, right? They're all like supernatural or whatever, or just so high tech it's silly. Is there like a unintended consequences, kind of like you have with the ciphers on the 12 plus? You're not going to get a 12 plus unless you're using this. Well, you can get a 12 plus, obviously, in one.
If you are interested, I can show you the math on the highest of 36 and 46.
Take a peek at.
I'm just looking at the time. We're running a little bit over.
Okay.
If we have any thoughts or we want to add to the conversation, Michael, do you want us to contact you? Or
I always put updates in the shared page. So like you could take your distribution that you found, take a snapshot and drop it into the document.
Yeah.
Yep. Throw any more comments you have there. Any other ideas? Feel free to just edit that document. Yeah, I guess the last thing I'd want to say with our time is thank you. I hope that everyone had fun. I hope you had a good time. I hope that Playstorming was a positive experience. I will say I really appreciated how each of you contributed to the project in a collaborative way. I didn't see anybody like waiting in, trying to be the number one editor or anything like that. It very much felt like a team effort. And the story we told was a lot of fun. Your characters are really interesting. So that's my feedback. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It was
it was
fun.
a pleasure.
It was great playing with all of you.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast now. And hopefully that'll give you all some time to stretch your legs. We do have another hour break coming up here, but I just wanted to make sure that we ended our time correctly. Dono, thank you so much for keeping an eye on the clock. Stephen, thank you so much for putting in all that effort as the writer to collect all of these ideas that these giant brains we have vomited forth. Simon, I'm glad that we had you as a Googler, that you Googled our numbers for the dice and things like that. You're an excellent scholar and a gentleman. So thank you.